Chapter 1822. The situation was instantly reversed. When Maelstrom Emperor Zhong, which had initially held the upper hand, suddenly fell into a disadvantageous position, Jiu Yin almost instantly sensed it. It was clear that Lavin's pressure had failed to force out the expert hidden inside number 60 high, so he could only do it himself now. Inside the yin-yang iron cage, Jiu Yin stared at Wang Muyu in front of him. He knew that this was the best target. If he wanted to lure out that hidden expert, he would have to make the child suffer a little first. He opened his hand, and a golden spirit rune spread out from his palm like a ripple. Then it slowly spread toward Wang Muyu. As a member of the Heavenly Law Alliance, they weren't only good at using the Heavenly Law spear techniques. Mind control techniques were what the Heavenly Law Alliance's members mainly cultivated. Jiu Yin had already been very careful in casting the mind-manipulating spell. It was a diluted version of the spell, and he hadn't used his full strength. This was a spell that could control a person's mind for a short period of time. It was just that Jiu Yin had held back since the person he was dealing with was a child. If he directly used the undiluted version, Wang Muyu might be left with serious repercussions after the spell was lifted. But Jiu Yin hadn't expected that although he had clearly successfully cast the mind-manipulating spell, his mind connection with Wang Muyu hadn't truly been established. Strange. He was quite surprised, even if it was a diluted version. Even if it was a diluted version, it was just a child. How could his control fail? Jiu Yin frowned. Golden ripples surged in his palm as he unhesitatingly increased his strength, in an attempt to control Wang Muyu. In the next second, he felt that his mind-manipulating skill was reflected back by a force. At the same time, an illusion appeared in his mind. When he came back to his senses, he and Wang Muyu were no longer in the space they were in. His soul had been moved. Jiu Yin immediately reacted, and broke out in a cold sweat. He never thought that Wang Muyu would actually have this trick up his sleeve. He wasn't an ordinary primary school student. In a split second, Jiu Yin's soul had been moved to a brand new space. No ordinary person could do this. Not only that, Jiu Yin also realized that the space he was in was very extraordinary. The mystical power of a dragon's breath swirled in the air, giving him a frightening feeling, as if he were looking at 10,000 dragons making a pilgrimage. Roar! A huge dragon shadow appeared in the sky, overlooking the earth. This was the Dharma Laksana spirit that Wang Muyu had conjured, and it was incredibly majestic. Who the hell are you? Jiu Yin was utterly horrified. He had underestimated Wang Muyu, and at the same time felt that this truth was inconceivable. They had spent so much effort investigating which of the 6 people from No. 60 high was the hidden expert. In the end, he never thought that the primary school student in front of him was the hidden boss. Was it the immemorial one? Jiu Yin frowned. If it was an ancient being, Wang Muyu would probably be at the peak, because he had already felt the difference in strength, and it was very obvious. Damn it! At the same time, Hisomo discovered that he could no longer move his body. In the distance, the roar of a dragon could be heard, as if it came from the other side. At this moment, in the depths of Wang Muyu's inner world, Ku Yun's soul was trembling. That silhouette of a dragon that flickered with myriad colors in the sky was simply too huge. Even though it was just a blurry silhouette, it was enough to make one feel suffocated. Who on earth are you? Staring at this scene, Hisomo felt like he had completely collapsed. He couldn't imagine Wang Muyu's true identity at all, even though he already had some guesses in his heart. As you can see, I'm a dragon, Wang Muyu said without hiding anything. He had moved Hisomo's soul into the inner world, and wasn't worried at all that Hisomo would tell others about it later. That was because he was sure that Hisomo would be mentally unstable after he left, and would also be so terrified that he would forget what had happened in the inner world. Heh. Hisomo was stupefied. His knees couldn't support his terror at all, and he collapsed on the spot. Dragon? What kind of joke was this? That was a creature that had already been extinct for tens of thousands of years, an existence that only appeared in legends. In the current cultivation world, it was impossible for a dragon to still be alive. At that moment, Hisomo was completely dumbfounded by Wang Muyu's revelation of his identity. That was to say, he wasn't actually facing an ancient being, but a dragon in human form. He felt like he was dreaming, and it felt very unreal. So you're the mastermind behind this? Hisomo's voice was trembling, and he couldn't believe this outcome. He thought that the Heavenly Law Union would definitely win this battle. In the end, he didn't expect a little dragon person to appear out of nowhere. Mastermind behind this? Hearing Hisomo's words, Wang Muyu squinted his eyes and smiled. I don't have that ability. Hearing that, Hisomo was even more horrified. Since you're not the mastermind behind this, that means you're being controlled by someone? This question made Wang Muyu think about it carefully, and he answered cautiously. I can't say that I'm being controlled. Right now, we're in a separate relationship. He calls me brother, and I call him father. Hisomo's mouth twitched. What the hell is this? Since you're a dragon, how can you recognize an earthling? So what if I'm an earthling? Don't look down on earthlings. Not all earthlings are as weak as you. Wang Muyu retorted with a displeased expression. He looked at Hisomo and shrugged. I thought that even if you weren't as outstanding as I imagined, you would at least be a qualified opponent. But when you were locked in the cage, I already sensed that you didn't even get a passing score, which disappointed me. If it wasn't for Dad also participating in this competition, I wouldn't even have to fight in a battle of this level. Hearing this, Hisomo's face turned slightly red, and he felt so ashamed that he wanted to find a hole to crawl into. His body trembled slightly as he suppressed his anger. Don't go too far. In the end, this earth is still the earth of earthling cultivators. It's not your turn to comment on human cultivators. Let me correct you. What I said just now wasn't a comment, it was pure contempt. Wang Muyu laughed. On this earth, apart from Wang Ling, Lotus Sun, Wang Nuan, and the earthlings who were related to them, Wang Muyu had never taken any other earthlings seriously from the beginning. At that moment, Hisomo stared at Wang Muyu with a crafty look in his eyes. Don't think that you're invincible. There's always someone better than you. Is that so? Why didn't you say so earlier? I could have given you a chance to ask for help. Wang Muyu didn't care about Hisomo's trump card at all. Then, he withdrew the aura of the inner world, and gave Hisomo a chance to catch his breath. Come on, call out your trump card. Let me see what kind of trash it is. Chapter 1823. Everything was going according to Wang Ling's plan. Jiu Yun, who had been suppressed by Wang Muyu, quickly sent a request for help as the leader of Heavenly Dao Alliance Team 2. It was no wonder that the only ones who dared to come and help Jiu Yun at this time were the collectors of the royal bloodline, which was the sacred race, led by the Holy King. However, neither the Heavenly Dao Alliance nor Jiu Yun had the right to speak directly to the sacred race, so they could only entrust an organization designated by the sacred race to convey the message. And this organization was the Tengu. What Jiu Yun hadn't expected was that Wang Ling was actually in control of the Tengu. This was because Levis had already become the new Supreme Pontiff. And the Supreme Pontiff was an 8-star Tengu, so he had the absolute right to speak in the Tengu organization, and also had the right to speak to the sacred race. Thus, when Levis received Jiu Yun's request for help, he wasn't in a hurry to send reinforcements despite being the Supreme Pontiff. He hated the Heavenly Law Alliance, who tried to smooth things over, and he had wanted to teach them a lesson from the beginning. Hence, he had temporarily set aside Jiu Yun's request for help in an attempt to make Jiu Yun suffer a little more of the mental pressure and torment he felt when he faced off against Wang Muyu. There was nothing more joyous than watching someone put on a mask of pain. Of course, at the same time, Pei Luoqi and Maishi were also standing in front of him. The two of them stood respectfully in front of him with their eyes closed and their heads lowered, not daring to meet his gaze. They were as obedient as two grandsons and didn't dare speak at all. In order to shift the blame, the two of them had blamed the Supreme Pontiff's death on someone else. In the end, this Yuan Venerate Master was actually standing in front of them, completely unscathed. After ruling out the possibility of a fake corpse, the two of them tacitly began to secretly use their own methods to verify the Supreme Pontiff's identity. The Supreme Pontiff's cultivation level wasn't very high, so the two of them, who were already immortal venerates, had countless methods to verify the Supreme Pontiff's identity. They had originally thought that this Supreme Pontiff was an imposter, so they had confidently tried to unmask the Supreme Pontiff. Levis naturally knew what the two of them were thinking, so he had deliberately walked down to warm them up, giving them a chance to test him. However, Wang Nuan's shadow film assimilation technique was so perfect that it was impossible for the two of them to break it. It's actually the Supreme Pontiff. Pei Luoqi and Maishi broke out in a cold sweat at the same time. The two of them had a guilty conscience. They had considered all the possibilities, but they never thought that the great Pope would really come back to life. Levis knew that the time was right when he saw the panic on their faces. The corners of his lips curled up as he followed the tone of the great Pope and said, "I know that the two of you have always had a problem with me. No, the two of us are loyal to the church. How could we have anything against the elder brother? Pei Tachi Pado to Tachi Shi to their relationship. Pado Pe to Chiang to. Pen was to say he to the Supreme Pontiff he to say." When Magoxi heard that Paluki was trying to curry favor with him, he naturally didn't want to be outdone. He hurriedly explained, "I don't know where Supreme Pontiff heard this news, but both of us have deep respect for the Supreme Pontiff. I don't know where the Supreme Pontiff got the news, but both of us respect the Supreme Pontiff." Pei Luoqi's mouth twitched. "What do you mean, Great General? Are you saying that I don't respect the Supreme Pontiff as much as you do? All these years, the Heavenly Tao Alliance has served the Church, mediated conflicts between different forces, and risked our lives. We have also helped you settle many things. Did the Supreme Pontiff forget about these things?" When Levis heard that, he was not in a hurry to speak. He tried his best to control his emotions, using his usual professionalism to hold back his laughter as he watched the two people below the stage begin to quarrel. Maishi said, "The Heavenly Tao Alliance is just an organization that tries to smooth things over. How can you brag about that? If not for the Supreme Pontiff's support, how many forces would be willing to give the Heavenly Tao Alliance such face?" Pei Luoqi said, "I wonder if the Supreme Pontiff dares to say the same thing to the Heavenly Tao Alliance's leader?" Maishi chuckled. "Why wouldn't I dare?" Pei Luoqi said, "The Heavenly Tao Alliance serves the Church. Hurting the Heavenly Tao Alliance's leader's heart is hurting the Church's heart, as well as the Supreme Pontiff's heart. You said earlier that you respect the Supreme Pontiff, but I feel that you don't care about him at all. Unlike me, who only cares about the Church's leader." Realizing that the topic was getting a little off track, Levis hurriedly cleared his throat and steered the conversation back to where he wanted it to be. "Gentlemen, there's no need to argue anymore. I know that both of you are loyal to me." He stood up and gripped the cane that symbolized the Supreme Pontiff's authority as he said unhurriedly, "I didn't call the two of you here to denounce you. I just wanted to remind you not to fall into a trap." "A trap? What does the Supreme Pontiff mean?" Pei Luoqi said. "The two of you are quarreling here. May I ask who the biggest beneficiary is?" Levis asked. "The biggest beneficiary?" Maishi frowned. One of the people who had something to do with this matter was Raven, and the other was Levis. Although Levis had been rescued by Battlesect and had yet to be found, it was obvious that this sucker of a president of Scarlet Orchid Association wasn't directly related to the beneficiary. Thus, when Levis, who was pretending to be the Supreme Pontiff, said this, Pei Luoqi and Maishi instantly understood. Two words popped up in their minds at the same time. Raven. This extremely shrewd woman had been hiding in Glio City all these years to develop herself, using the name of a variety show producer to secretly recruit people. If there was a conflict between the two sides, the biggest beneficiary would naturally be none other than Raven. I knew this woman wouldn't be easy to deal with. I see. Big Diviner is intentionally reminding us not to fight among ourselves, but to point our spear at a common enemy. At that moment, Maishi and Pei Luoqi expressed their stance. The truth was that they didn't have any substantive opinions about Raven. After all, Raven was only developing herself in Glio City, and actually wasn't a threat to the Heavenly Tao Alliance and Maishi's nationwide army. But now, because of their modesty, the two of them were doing their utmost to show their loyalty to the Church. Thus, Raven became the common target of their conflict. So destroy her. Levis knew that the time was ripe. Pretending to be the Supreme Pontiff, he gave the order to Maishi and Pei Luoqi. Chapter 1824. Not long after Juyun sent out a distress signal, The reinforcements he had imagined didn't arrive in time. Instead, a large number of ground troops in grayish-brown combat uniforms and Heavenly Tao Alliance combat troops with the Heavenly Tao Alliance's auspicious cloud logo on them surrounded them from all directions. These were the elite ground troops from Magoxi and the rest of the Heavenly Tao Alliance's teams, except for Group 2, who had rushed over under Poloki's command. Everything was going as Wang Ling had expected. Thus, the variety show wouldn't be able to continue with the scuffle between the three forces in Glio City. And this was what Wang Ling had planned from the very beginning. The scene immediately descended into chaos. Raven's White Warriors, Parika's Heavenly Law Alliance's army, and Mike Assie's army started a vigorous group fight. They were locked in a fierce battle. This chaos left Group 2's group leader Jiyun and the 6 child prodigies from Maelstrom Emperor dumbfounded. They had just escaped from the secret room, but the chaos in front of them directly left them dumbfounded, and they had no idea what was going on at all. What's going on? It looks like the White Warriors outside are fighting. Then are we going to record the show or not? Did the production team arrange this? They were just students in the end, and had never seen such a scene in the peaceful Cultivation era. When the snow-white bodies of Raven's White Warriors were stained bright red by the blood splattering everywhere, the glaring color also woke up the tense nerves of the people from Maelstrom Emperor and Number 60 High School. This clearly hadn't been deliberately arranged by the production team, but was a small-scale civil war. Everything was real. But why were they fighting? Heavenly Tao Alliance Group 2's group leader Jiyun and the 6 child prodigies from Maelstrom Emperor couldn't figure it out. They clearly knew the recording plan for the variety show this time, and were also well aware that it was related to the 3 forces fighting in front of them. Furthermore, it was a plan that the Great Pope had coordinated. In other words, the 3 forces in front of them were all participants, and Madame Raven was just the main planner. In the end, these 3 forces were directly fighting each other in front of everyone. I get it. At that moment, Hirogwa cried out in alarm. As a veteran game geek, he quickly thought of a possibility. Is this the legendary dog-beating producer? Wang Ling. Everyone. Hirogwa gave a serious analysis. That's the only explanation. Otherwise, why would they start fighting? Think of all the people who have done this. The game designers who are supposed to make money out of it. But every new year, they come up with a bunch of props to destroy the balance of the game. What the hell is this? Everyone fell silent. In this kind of situation, the scene was bloody, and it stimulated everyone's eyes. Let's go. Old Lin has already prepared a car. It's better if we leave this place first, Lotus Sun said. The show would definitely not be able to continue recording. In order to avoid being affected by the battle, everyone could only think of a way to evacuate. Retreat? Then what about our duel? In the Maelstrom Emperor, the team leader was a little dissatisfied. He had been looking forward to this for a long time, and finally had the chance to face off against the legendary Number 60 High School. Moreover, he had been very much looking forward to sparring with Lotus Sun, but he hadn't expected that the situation would suddenly become chaotic. Not only would the show be paused, but it was very likely that he would never have a chance to challenge Lotus Sun again. The future is long, there will always be a chance, Lotus Sun replied unhurriedly. Right now, it's more important to ensure everyone's safety. This isn't something we students can participate in. She smiled gracefully, then stared at the people in the Maelstrom Emperor in front of her. Of course, it's actually very simple if you want to exchange pointers with me. You just need to join the Grey Sect. Grey Sect? That literary organization? That's right, I'm also a member of the Grey Sect. Lotus Sun smiled. Every year, our Grey Sect organizes competitions between our disciples, both civil and martial. If you consider joining, you'll have a chance later on. If you're active in the sect, you can even personally apply to the sect leader for a challenge. Hearing this, the eyes of the people in the Maelstrom Emperor instantly lit up. They actually didn't want to be manipulated by Lavin to participate in this terribly fake variety competition at all. Instead, they really wanted to rely on genuine talent to have a fair and just competition with this mysterious Eastern school from Huaxiao Nation. Admittedly, if someone else had said this, they certainly wouldn't have believed it so easily. But it was Lotus Sun who had said it, so it was different. These people in the Maelstrom Emperor were well aware of this young lady's identity and status. She was the young lady of Huagua Water Curtain Group. It wasn't likely that the words of such a person would come out casually. At the same time, Wang Ling saw that Lotus Sun was subconsciously developing the Grey Sect. Wang Ling could only secretly praise her in his heart. Because not long ago on Sun Island, Lotus Sun had just established the Sun Island Grey Sect branch, represented by Chive Sasaki, in the strongest high school there, Nine Paths High School. Who would have thought that she would directly attack the main topic now, and was about to establish a Grey Sect branch headed by Whirlpool Emperor in Glio City. Wang Ling was truly amazed by this kind of organizational and planning ability. She had directly turned an enemy into a friend. After using a short period of time to convince the people in the Maelstrom Emperor, the people from number 60 High School and Whirlpool Emperor finally boarded the bus which Steward Lin had prepared to leave the scene. As they were about to set off, Wang Ling saw Wang Muyu running over from a distance. In front of so many people, this little guy wasn't the least bit embarrassed. He directly jumped up and pounced on Wang Ling's upper body like a koala bear. Wang Ling was helpless. Looking at Wang Muyu's face, the corners of his mouth twitched, but he couldn't really do anything to Wang Muyu. This face was really too similar to his. Wang Ling felt that if he made a move, it would really feel like, I'm hitting myself. Where's that person called Jiu Yun? Hirogwa asked when he saw Wang Muyu come over alone. Ignore him. He's not a primary school student at all. He's the leader of Heavenly Tao Alliance Group 2. The 6 people in the Maelstrom Emperor immediately betrayed Jiu Yun and revealed his true identity. F***K. Pretending to be a primary school student? Hirogwa was utterly shocked. Although he had already expected that this program wouldn't be fair, he hadn't expected that Madame Lavin to be so shameless. What kind of expert was the leader of a Heavenly Tao Alliance Group 2? She had actually been sent to face off against a real primary school student. Didn't she feel the least bit ashamed? But Wang Muyu just smiled good-naturedly. It's fine, he didn't do anything to me. On the other side, Jiu Yun, who had been beaten beyond recognition by Wang Muyu, was lying in a shed in the sports center. He had lost his memory after being beaten by Wang Muyu, and couldn't remember what had happened at all. When he came back to his senses, he could only hear the chaotic sounds of fighting outside, as well as the clear sound of footsteps approaching him. I never thought it would actually turn out like this. The person who spoke was a man with a golden vortex on his face. He was the Holy Race's special envoy sent by Holy King, and the person whom the Sea Demon had addressed as Holy Venerable. As His Majesty Holy King expected, the opponent is difficult to deal with. At that moment he stared at Jiu Yun, who was riddled with scars, and sighed in an ethereal voice. Then he abruptly turned his head and stared in the direction of the bus where Wang Ling and the others were. It's there, right? Holy Venerable laughed contemptuously. Looks like it's my turn to take the field. Chapter 1825. This Holy Venerable had a gloomy, swirling face. He was certain that there had to be a hidden expert in number 60 high, so after observing Jiu Yun's injuries, he rushed in the direction of the bus without hesitation. Intense killing intent approached from afar. Wang Ling could tell that this person was serious, and really intended to kill a bunch of Foundation Establishment and Golden Core students. For an alien expert whose realm was far above Earth's, killing Foundation Establishment and Golden Core cultivators would be as easy as stepping on ants. There was a hum in the sky above the bus where Wang Ling and the others were. This Holy Venerable directly walked out of the center of the golden vortex. His face couldn't be seen clearly, but one could clearly sense a mocking smile in the vortex. Then he straightaway struck out with his palm, which turned into a cage that covered the sky. It was a cage constructed of super-dense spiritual energy molecules. The inside of the cage had its own universal environment. Once someone was locked inside, they would have to bear the immense pressure of the universe, which was not something that cultivators in the building foundation stage or the core formation stage could resist. Wang Ling, what should we do? Lotus Sun asked telepathically. She could also tell that this was a tough test from the opponent, who wanted to directly filter out who on earth the hidden almighty was among them. The girl grit her teeth, and the blue sword chi around her was ready to be unleashed. She was ready to protect everyone in Wang Ling's stead. Even if her strength was exposed, there would always be a way to deal with it later, such as erasing the memories of those who had seen this scene. Whether it was physical or magical erasure, Lotus Sun was already very familiar with them. But what she didn't expect was, this time, the youngster actually walked forward with his hands in the pockets of his school uniform. The golden vortex behind this holy sage released an incomparably dazzling light that illuminated the sky in front of it. Under this dazzling halo of light, the people from number 60 High School and Maelstrom Emperor all saw Wang Ling's figure walking forward alone. The moment the palm cage collided, the youngster's figure, which looked slightly thin and frail, actually disintegrated the entire cage with just one finger. Wang Ling, Super Chun Hirogua, Li Yue and the 6 people in the Maelstrom Emperor's jaws dropped, their faces filled with extreme astonishment. They rubbed their eyes, unable to believe what they were seeing. I'm not dreaming, right? Is this really Wang Ling? Is Lingzi really that powerful? Super Chun and Hirogua, who usually joked about Wang Ling being a lucky mascot, in particular, had expressions of shock that were almost indescribable in words. They would never have thought that Wang Ling would actually be a hidden top cultivator. Obviously, this was a monster. Even the 6 people in the Maelstrom Emperor broke out in a cold sweat. They had always felt that Madame Lavin's arrangements were unfair. After all, in terms of strength on paper, their average strength was higher than that of Maelstrom Emperor, who was at the Golden Core stage. Asking a bunch of Foundation establishment cultivators from number 60 High to compete with them was really too much of a bully. Most importantly, they even invited one of the Heavenly Law Union's team leaders to pretend to be a primary school student and participate in the competition. But looking at it now, such an arrangement seemed to be quite reasonable, because there was also a hidden big shot hidden among the people from number 60 High. Furthermore, it was actually the one who looked the most harmless. At the same time, Wang Ling's school uniform emitted golden red immortal chi. This was the Immortal King Shield, which he had constructed with primordial chi, spirit chi and the power of primordial chi. And it instantly covered everyone present. It was obvious that the Immortal King Shield had been enchanted with a rune language that was completely incomprehensible. But Feng Xing more or less knew what this spell was for. It referred to the memory erasing spell that had been fixed. Those who were completely unaware of Wang Ling's strength would only remember how strong Wang Ling was when the Immortal King Shield was placed on them. Once the Immortal King Shield was deactivated, everyone's memories would revert to Wang Ling being just a lucky mascot. This was what Wang Ling had in mind for the future. This way, he wouldn't have to erase these people's memories every time. In any case, it would only take a blink of an eye to end the battle. It really is you. I knew there was something wrong with you. On the other side, the holy sage in the sky had a pleasantly surprised expression on his face when he saw that his cage had been broken. The palm prison was just a basic spell used for probing, and hadn't even used a tenth of his strength. He soared into the air and swept his foot across, wanting to kill Wang Ling with one kick. In a flash, his right leg was densely covered in runes and shrouded in golden light, and a vortex appeared where the sole of his foot was as it flew forward. Space was already completely distorted, and there was a power that seemed to be stirring everything up. If this kick landed, the explosive impact would directly affect the entire area. Wang Ling reacted with lightning speed, and at the same time as he grabbed the foot, he pulled the other party into his intrinsic spirit field. At the same time, everyone in the vicinity was brought inside. Wang Ling's intrinsic spirit field had been built on number 60 High School's foundation, and a lot of people here felt like they had returned to number 60 High School. Boom! As Wang Ling had expected, although he didn't feel any pain after blocking the blow with just one hand, the immense impact still caused the ground behind him to cave in as easily as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. It was a crater with a radius of thousands of feet, and cracks spread out in all directions. It was clear how powerful this holy sage's kick had been, but it was clear that the other party had underestimated the strength of Wang Ling's body. Expressionless, Wang Ling grabbed the man's ankle and swung him through the air like a skipping rope, violently slamming him into the ground with astonishing force. The intrinsic spirit field trembled continuously, as if it was experiencing a major earthquake. Wang Ling hadn't fully exerted his full strength yet, but this holy sage had already been beaten beyond recognition by Wang Ling's repeated attacks. The golden vortex on his face had directly deformed and sunk in deeply, and yellow blood spurted out of the center of the vortex. A supreme expert with a sage body. Holy Sage was stupefied. His head had been smashed senseless. He had thought that Wang Ling was just an ordinary eternal-level expert, but after launching a careless attack, he was stunned to realize that this wasn't the case. The youngster had grabbed his ankle, and in that instant, Holy Sage saw a faint layer of golden-red light covering the youngster's body. It was like a sparkling golden-red jade, sparkling and translucent, without the slightest flaw. The mark of a sage body was that the flesh and bones in the body could turn a faint golden color, which was what Buddhism called indestructible. Generally speaking, the stronger a person was, the thicker this golden color would be. However, the golden red saint body was something he had never seen before. It was a crystal clear golden red. Only the strongest of the saint body could cultivate this kind of saint body, where even the bone marrow and blood vessels were tempered to perfection. This person, who on earth was he? Chapter 1826. There was no doubt that this was a crushing education. Wang Ling was dragging this holy sage by the ankles and beating him wantonly on the ground like a scarecrow, and he no longer had the imposing air of a holy sage like he had when he had first appeared. His whirlpool face was now bruised and swollen, and yellow blood kept spurting out. Even his aura was much weaker, as if he had been beaten to the point of death. Wang Ling's crazy output could be described as moving clouds and flowing water. The students from No. 60 High School and Maelstrom Imperial High School who had been completely clueless about Wang Ling earlier were all stupefied, as if they were dreaming and couldn't believe what they were seeing. As expected of their dad, Wang Muyu teleported to the top of the school building, which was an excellent vantage point with a wide field of view. At the same time, he kept an eye on this holy sage who was being beaten up like crazy. It could only be said that the sacred race's holy venerates were a bit stronger than ordinary primordial ones. In terms of combat power, Wang Muyu felt that this holy venerate was much stronger than Jingzhe and Yanrua. In the end, he was still beaten up by Wang Ling until he didn't even have the strength to fight back. But at the same time, Wang Muyu also knew that this wasn't the end. Every race had their own characteristics. They knew very little about the holy race. Apart from knowing that they had strange whirlpool faces, there didn't seem to be anything else special about them. He knew that although Wang Ling had beaten him up badly, he hadn't directly killed the other party because he still wanted to feel out what else the holy race had up their sleeves. I thought Lingzi wasn't a normal person, but I didn't expect him to be so brutal. Superchin was very excited. Although he still hadn't completely digested what was happening to Wang Ling, this scene still gave him a sense of comfort from the bottom of his heart. That's right. Hirogwa nodded. As a good brother, he was equally proud of Wang Ling. We should have realized it earlier. After all, not everyone can be like Wang Ling, who scores above average in every exam. Actually, I also suspected that there was something wrong with Lingzi. For example, he was able to win several major competitions, which was very strange. We clearly aren't that strong. At that moment, Wang Ling's existence was completely revealed to the people of No. 60 High like the sun dispelling the clouds. It was just that this holy clan member in front of him was still a mystery to him. He can't kill you. Get up and fight again. No matter what, you have to pull out a few of his teeth. At that moment, Wang Ling, Wang Muyu and Lotus Sun heard a voice from the other side. A giant golden eye opened in the depths of the universe, and its gaze pierced through the layers of space to directly enter the intrinsic spirit field. Wang Ling noticed this mysterious gaze. At the same time, he followed the line of sight that seemed to be transmitted from the other side of the universe, and saw the true form of the giant golden eye. For a moment, his thoughts were running wild. That was because the appearance of this giant eye was very similar to that of the universe blood fetus, which he had previously obtained from the outer divine palace. Wang Ling currently still had that universe blood fetus, and he infused it with a lot of spirit power every day. But that universe ghost fetus was like a baby that could never be fed. No matter how much energy Wang Ling poured into it, the flower bud never bloomed. Thus, Wang Ling wondered if something had gone wrong at some point. In other words, there was another cosmic freak. He had to collect both of them in order to have a resonance reaction. He thought that it would be a long time before he could find any new clues, but he did not expect to receive new information from the sacred ones. Wang Ling deliberately waited. On the ground, the Lord, whose face was swollen and bruised, quickly stood up with a new look. It had a powerful self-healing ability, and could also shorten the duration of the heavy injury effect. Wang Ling couldn't help but praise this kind of recovery method. It was much better than what Baizhi had done back then. Gui Laolu tried to kill him. Even if we can't kill him, we have to cripple him. How can the prestige of our saint race fall into the hands of an earthling? The members of the Holy Clan from the other side of the universe were still instigating Wang Ling again, through the universe nightmare embryo in their hands. They shared a common hatred for a common enemy, and looked like they wanted nothing more than to skin Wang Ling alive. Wang Ling raised his eyelids disinterestedly. He didn't care about this bunch of clowns at all. He stared at Holy Master Ghost 6, who had stood up once more, and said indifferently, "Is that enough?" Ghost Old 6's face darkened as he looked at Wang Ling and said, "You're too conceited. You're actually being soft-hearted in battle? If you want to fight, you have to fight until the other party has no breathing room at all. I admit that I underestimated you earlier, but our holy clan isn't so easy to deal with." He snorted. As soon as he said this, he immediately stamped his foot on the ground, and countless golden tentacles stretched out from the cracks in the ground to directly grab Wang Ling's ankle. Wang Ling frowned slightly. It wasn't that this method was strange, but that the moment the golden tentacle wrapped around Wang Ling's ankle, he had sensed through it that this holy venerable had the power of the bloodline of a ruler of the old days. Strands of immortal chi mixed with the power of primordial chaos shook off the golden tentacles. Wang Ling had originally wanted to scare them back into the ground, but he hadn't expected them to become even more aggressive as they fought. Even more golden tentacles emerged from the ground, and many glazed scales formed on the surface of the tentacles. Wang Ling's expression was cold as he directly grabbed one of the tentacles and peeled off the scales. In the end, he was stunned to find that the scales on it weren't ordinary scales, but dragon scales, and that wasn't the most outrageous thing. The most outrageous thing was, after Wang Ling pulled off the dragon scale, it was as if the golden tentacles had been stimulated by something, and countless wings actually sprouted from their bodies. They were wholly crystalline and extremely sharp. As they flung the tentacles about, the wings instantly turned into blades of light that fell off the golden tentacles and surged toward Wang Ling. In that instant, the place where Wang Ling was standing was bombarded. Smoke and dust rose in all directions, and the ground that had been rained down by this massive amount of spirit power was a fiery red, as if it was being roasted by the sun. So strong. Lotus Sun sighed in her heart. After all, this was Wang Ling's intrinsic spirit field. To be able to be so unbridled in an environment that was disadvantageous to them, this holy clan really couldn't be underestimated. But at this point in the battle, a question slowly popped up in Wang Ling's heart. He had imagined many possibilities of the holy clan, but had never thought that they would actually be a bunch of hybrids, or to put it bluntly, to use a modern internet catchphrase. Good heavens! This race was simply the ultimate stitched monster. Chapter 1827. No matter what, Wang Ling never expected the Holy Clan to be a hybrid product of ancient cultivators, the god race, the dragon race, and the rulers of the old days. The most outrageous thing about this wasn't that the Holy Clan had the blood of the dragon race and the rulers of the old days, but that the Holy Clan also had the blood of ancient cultivators. In other words, the Holy Clan was still essentially human. This was what terrified Wang Ling the most. According to Wang Ling's deductions, the Holy Clan was the first to have a hybrid with the rulers of the old days, followed by the dragon race and the god race. So how hungry must that big brother have been back then to choose to mate with those alien monsters with tentacles all over their bodies? The most outrageous thing was that they actually really gave birth to a hybrid child. Then, that first hybrid child became the first Holy Clan leader, and inherited his father's fine tradition by developing feelings for a dragon. Given that they were already a hybrid, They mixed their blood again, giving birth to a hybrid who was simultaneously a human ancient cultivator, a ruler of the old days, and a dragon. It was only when the god race entered the picture that the current Holy Clan was formed. At the same time, Wang Ling also deduced that the Holy Clan had merged with quite a few other races during this period, but because their bloodlines were too weak, they weren't of much use at all. So the current Holy Clan was actually really weird. In Wang Ling's view, this kind of hybrid behavior was no different from using one's own bloodline to raise gu. Logically speaking, there should be a racial segregation mechanism in the universe. Even if the mechanism failed sometimes, resulting in a hybrid, the hybrid would most likely become physically weak and deformed because of the racial mismatch, and it would be impossible for them to survive. It was clear that the original Holy Clan leader had withstood all these tests back then, and had indeed survived with the bloodlines of two different races. Furthermore, his birth had laid a solid foundation for the Holy Clan to absorb the other races in the universe. The Holy Clan, the soul of the Holy Clan. The Holy Clan is the best of the best. Go Ghost Old Six, kill him directly. At that moment, a voice in the distance egged him on again. This holy venerable called Ghost Old Six immediately erupted, and thousands of golden tentacles surged out of the ground under his feet to form 1,000 hands on his back. Upon closer inspection, it turned out to be a strange Dharma form of an ancient god. It was a golden ancient god with only half a body, surrounded by 10,000 tentacles that had morphed into arms, a godly halo above its head, and a pair of dragon wings on its back. Even Wang Ling had never seen such a Dharma form before, and it instantly caused the air to collapse inch by inch. At a time like this, fighting inside the intrinsic spirit field wouldn't be able to withstand this kind of attack. Heavens! At the critical moment, Wang Ling activated his King's Eye and released its golden pupil power. An ancient radiance seemed to extend from ancient times to the present, giving off a feeling of eternity. After dealing with the 10 shelter creatures the last time, he once again used his King's Eye to summon the heavenly world, which was above the supreme world. Heavenly King's Eye. People were so stunned that they couldn't speak when they sensed it, and the fluctuations that clan leader Wang It felt. At such a close distance, the visual impact was too explosive, and it wasn't something that any special effects movie in the modern cultivation world could match. The Golden Heaven City was as tall as the sky, and the ancient buildings with towering watchtowers overflowed with light and color, exuding an unparalleled divinity that filled the entire sky. Just looking at it with the naked eye and feeling it with the body was enough to make people involuntarily drop to their knees and worship it. Heaven City. Even Wang Muyu was stupefied. This was the first time he had seen Wang Ling use this kind of technique, and there was a stunned expression on his little face. Only the strong would understand how outrageous this was. As for Super Chun, Hero Gua and the others, because of the huge disparity in their realms and the fact that they had the immortal King Shield, they weren't afraid of the oppressive might, which prevented them from directly perceiving the effect. Even though they knew that this was an amazing technique, they couldn't understand the meaning of this heaven city for the moment. The only word that could describe the shock in their hearts and minds was F***K. There's actually such a thing. Even Gue Old Six couldn't believe that a human cultivator from Earth could actually open the door above the supreme world. He had thought that he could directly disintegrate Wang Ling's intrinsic spirit field after summoning his Dharma form spirit, but unexpectedly, this young man from Earth had directly dissolved it with his power of sight, and summoned this kind of heaven's world to completely cover the intrinsic spirit field. Compared with the intrinsic spirit field just now, the strength of this heaven's world was self-evident. Although his hybrid ancient god couldn't break through, he was still very excited, because this meant that he could wreak havoc here. But, with the hybrid ancient god as the source, Gue Old Six controlled the massive power of chaos to condense it. The hybrid ancient god's body instantly swelled up, and stood out in the Golden Heaven City, like a chimpanzee tearing off the roof tiles as it turned into the size of a city. Hiss! The onlookers couldn't help sucking in their breaths of cold air. This kind of great divine power wasn't something that people at their level could come into contact with. If Wang Ling hadn't intentionally left them behind to watch, they might not have been able to touch this level even after hundreds or thousands of years. Everything was like a dream. Lotus Sun was also in a daze. For one thing, she was awed by the fierce battle scene, and for another, she was attracted by the figure of the young man in the sky. Only Wang Ling could tug at her heart all the time and make her thoughts wander uncontrollably. The enemy this time was really strong. Lotus Sun could indeed sense it. But for some reason, as long as Wang Ling was around, she always felt at ease. This ancient god is too big, it's as big as a city. Even movies don't dare use special effects like this. How are we going to fight this? Is Wang Ling going to be okay? Hero Guo's heart was pounding. He'll definitely be fine. Everyone be careful. Just don't rush to the front to watch, said Lotus Sunday. Your mistake was to drag this bunch of lowly ants here to watch. At that moment, Gue Old Six, who had expanded the hybrid ancient god to the size of a city, smiled at Wang Ling. In order to keep you focused, I've decided to wipe out these ants first. As soon as he said that, he directly made a move. As his white sleeves flapped, the strange hybrid ancient god behind him moved swiftly at the same time. Like a comet crashing into the earth. A fist fell from the sky and punched in the direction of number 60 high, and the people in Maelstrom Imperial Palace. Wang Ling calculated its trajectory, and arrived at the scene the moment the fist fell. Surrounded by immortal chi, he stretched out his fist to meet the hybrid ancient god head-on. Boom. In that instant, the hybrid ancient god's fist, which was as big as a comet, exploded on the spot under Wang Ling's blow. Chapter 1828. Everyone's expressions changed, and they all sucked in cold breaths. Wang Ling's punches, which were as big as comets, had met them head-on like a drill, and instantly smashed them to smithereens. Wang Ling was too ferocious, and his strength was immeasurable. A conservative estimate of the power of that punch just now was more than 1,000 nuclei. What's a nuclei? After hearing this concept, Super Chun and the others were puzzled, and asked the others, is that a unit of combat strength? It's a unit of combat strength that can only be measured after reaching a realm that you can't even imagine. The power of one nuclei can easily destroy a planet the size of Earth and kill anyone below the progenitor realm. Lotus Sun replied at that moment. Damn. Then Wang Ling's punch just now had 1,000 nuclei? And this isn't even classmate Wang Ling's full strength. Freak. Why do I have such a freak living by my side? Super Chin couldn't help swearing. That being said, Lotus Sun could still see and sense the excitement on their faces. But at that moment, amidst his excitement, Super Chin suddenly noticed a blind spot. Boss Sun. Why do you know so much? Even Steward Lin, who was standing on the side, was baffled by this question. He and his friends were already completely dumbfounded, and had no idea what on earth was going on. But at least Wang Ling's showdown this time made Steward Lin suddenly understand a little why his miss was so interested in this ordinary Earth youngster. It was a pity that there was no cell phone signal in the heavenly world at the moment, otherwise he would definitely ask Bihu, what should I do if my miss falls in love with a nuclear bomb? I'm waiting online, it's urgent. It was actually classmate Wang Ling who told me telepathically just now. In a moment of desperation, Lotus Sun could only blurt out a lie. Her face was bright red, and anyone could see that her expression was uncomfortable. But in this situation, everyone was attracted by the magnificent battle scene in front of them, and no one bothered to check whether Lotus Sun's words were true or not. Normally, Super Chin would definitely have sensed that something was wrong right away. Telepathically? Why were you the only one who did it? When did the relationship between the two of you become so good? But now, like everyone else, all his thoughts were focused on the battle in front of him, and at the same time, he was doing his best to use his limited cultivation knowledge to refresh his overturned outlook on cultivation. Wang Ling's fist was like a meat bullet, and as he crashed into it fiercely, his whole body surged with golden light, like a Captain Marvel in a sci-fi movie. A long golden light trailed behind his body. At the same time, it was mixed with the original vital energy, the chaotic weapon, the spiritual energy, and other different energies from all over the universe. Finally, it gathered into a mixed immortal energy, which pushed his aura to the extreme and revealed his unparalleled combat ability. There was no doubt that Wang Ling at this time was at the top of human cultivators, and had the very best in his spirit in. He was like the chosen one who had been awakened from the ancient times. From start to finish, he had completely crushed his opponent. Wang was in him. Quickly. The ancient god hybrid healed extremely quickly. The moment his entire right arm was split into hundreds of millions of pieces by Wang Ling's punch, spirit power surged violently, and the broken pieces swiftly merged back into a whole. The earth youngster in front of him was too strange, and had never been seen before. He clearly wasn't an ancient being, but his aura crushed everything else. His physical strength alone had reached such an astonishing level. Not only did he have the most powerful heavenly world, he wasn't at a disadvantage at all in front of his hybrid ancient Ling. So, what kind of monster was this? Ghost Old Six's expression was solemn. He swiftly made a hand seal, and a familiar and terrifying aura burst forth and permeated the entire heavenly world. A huge palace rose from the ground. It was pitch black all over and covered in strange runes. The entire palace was hanging upside down, like an illusory ghost palace. It was completely out of place with the golden buildings in the heavenly world. Outer God Palace. Wang Ling frowned. He had been wondering why this ghost Old Six could still move freely and brandish his fists in the face of the heavenly world's pressure. It turned out that he had the support of an Outer God Palace. And it wasn't just one Outer God Palace. These outer deity palaces seemed to have been invaded by a virus. They directly connected together, and rose up from the ground in an inverted manner in the heavenly worlds. They intersected like fangs, forming two distinct worlds of darkness and light. This time, even Lotus Sun, who knew a lot, was stunned. She knew about the Outer God Palaces, but had never thought that after Wang Ling had destroyed one Outer God Palace, someone would actually be able to summon so many of them. Although these palaces weren't as majestic as they had been before, the main point was that there were so many of them that they gave off a strong sense of deterrence. More importantly, these Outer God Palaces gathered together formed a clear resistance in the heavenly world as they challenged Wang Ling. This hybrid race is too scary. Lotus Sun sighed in her heart. She had never thought that as a hybrid race, the holy race would actually be able to use the bloodline of the rulers of the old days to this extent. Not only could they control the remaining universe ghoul fetus, they could even control the Outer God Palace. And this was just a trump card of a holy sage's subordinates. Wouldn't the holy king behind them be even more tyrannical? In Wang Ling's view, the appearance of these Outer God Palaces in the heavenly world was a kind of infiltration. The rulers of the old days had always been very aggressive, so the moment these Outer God Palaces appeared, Wang Ling pondered the other party's intentions. Did they want to infiltrate his heavenly world, and then annex it? It was a very good idea. At least in Wang Ling's eyes, it was absolutely praiseworthy. But at the same time, Wang Ling also felt that it was a pity for Ghost Old Six's stupidity. It was obvious that someone at Gui Lu's level didn't understand what kind of existence the All Heavens world was, nor did he understand why there were so many golden palaces in the All Heavens world that formed such a large golden All Heavens city. Yes, every golden building in the heavenly city symbolized a civilization that had once disappeared in the universe. Although they were the same color, they were completely different in style. Wang Ling had now taken in these different civilizations one by one like figurines and integrated them into his heavenly world to form this heavenly city. At that moment, Wang Ling stared at the Outer God Palaces that Ghost Old Six had summoned and couldn't help smiling disdainfully. Since you gave them to me for free, then I'll take them all. He raised his hand and slowly folded his fingers. Chapter 1829. Wang Ling's slender fingers were as white as jade, and they released a terrifying spiritual pressure under the burst of spirit light. Immortal chi filled the air, and holy light shone everywhere, enveloping the entire All Heavens city, as well as the dozens of Outer God Palaces hanging down from above. It was obvious to the naked eye that these pitch-black Outer God Palaces were beginning to transform. As if they had been plated with a layer of gold paint, they turned from pitch black to gold and gradually assimilated with the All Heavens city. This engulfing force was too strong, and the terrifying spiritual pressure shook violently and crushed everything. As Wang Ling's palm closed, the speed at which the pitch black Outer God Palaces were being engulfed gradually accelerated. Gue Old Six was startled again. He had originally wanted to use these outer god palaces to fight Wang Ling as an equal in the All Heavens world, but he hadn't expected that his behavior would instead be giving Wang Ling a big gift. He instantly raised his hand, and the hybrid ancient god behind him did the same hand seal as him to resist desperately in an attempt to withdraw these outer god palaces. Once the outer god palaces were assimilated again, the All Heavens world would expand and become even more powerful than before. F***ck. He already couldn't beat them. Gue Old Six couldn't help cursing in his heart. He rarely cursed, but as one of the lofty 6 great guardians of the holy race and one of the holy venerables, he had never speculated about the Earth's cultivators with the greatest malice, but he never thought that the Earth's cultivators would be strong enough to make him swear. But even at this point, he didn't think that he had no chance of winning, because for the holy race, which attached great importance to the power of bloodlines, no matter how strong an Earth cultivator was, he had his own limitations. Cultivation had originated from ancient times. Although it had been created by human cultivators, the major races in the universe had different bloodlines, and some races with rare bloodlines were often more talented in cultivation than human cultivators on Earth. Gue Old Six had seen a lot of things in his lifetime. Although he was the youngest of the 6 great guardians and had the lowest seniority, he was recognized as a genius in the holy race. The power of his bloodline was evenly distributed, and he was known as the proud son of heaven of the holy race with a golden ratio. Even when he was cultivating, he was always by the side of the holy king. When he was sparring, the other 5 protectors would be his sparring partner. It was not an exaggeration to call him a group pet. In the eyes of the sacred race, Gue Old Six was the type of person who would grow stronger the more he fought, and he was someone who would grow stronger the stronger he met, the stronger he was. The other sacred race members watching the battle also had no doubt that Ghost Old Six would make a new breakthrough in this battle and reach an even higher level. At that moment, he was doing his best to fight Wang Ling for sovereignty over the Outer God Palace, not for anything else, but for pride. He had summoned it himself. If Wang Ling took it away just like that, it would be too humiliating. Thus, Ghost Old Six mustered all his strength, and his face turned red as he fought for Wang Ling. The hybrid ancient god behind him had the same expression as him, and at that moment, both of them put on pain masks, which made them look very different. In contrast, Wang Ling had maintained a relaxed posture from beginning to end as he stood in the air, his school uniform fluttering in the wind. From time to time, Ghost Six exerted pressure on Wang Ling's 5 fingers, which were slowly closing together. And then Wang Ling would regain control and close them again, as if he was arm wrestling with Ghost Six. "What's Lingzi doing?" Hirogua frowned as he watched this scene from a distance. What else can he be doing, at just playing? Superchin already had no energy to complain. He could clearly sense that Wang Ling still had a lot to spare. But the reason why Wang Ling hadn't chosen to end the match was very obvious. He wanted to torture this Ghost Old Six in front of him. Looking back, Superchin felt that Shadow Stream back then had really been child's play. How could a normal human cultivator from Earth be a match for this freak in front of him? Now that they had finally been matched with a cosmic powerhouse, it seemed pretty normal for them to show off their skills. Furthermore, delaying for so long was actually beneficial to their own cultivation. As expected of Lingzi, while he's playing, he's actually thinking about us at the same time. At that moment, Hirogua was suddenly a little moved as he said, "It's very rare to have a chance to watch a battle up close like this, and we may never have such an experience in our entire lives. Watching from the sidelines is beneficial to our own cultivation. Don't you think so, Boss Sun?" Yes. You're right. It's indeed very helpful to our cultivation." Lotus Sun gave her trademark fake smile, then put her hand to her forehead with a helpless expression on her face. She was overthinking things, and it was clear that she had a very serious case of enlightenment. Although watching a high-level cultivator fight was indeed helpful to the cultivation of a low-level cultivator, once the Immortal King Shield was removed, they wouldn't be able to remember anything and wouldn't be able to figure it out. Wang Ling stared at Ghost Old Six, who had used up all his strength. After a few more minutes of stalemate, and confirming that Ghost Old Six didn't have any more strength left, he decided to end the match. Effortlessly, he directly clenched his fist, and in that instant, the black outer deity palaces were completely assimilated and turned golden, becoming part of the buildings of all nations in the city of all heavens. When the connection to the outer deity palaces was broken, Ghost Old Six immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. The pain of the backlash was directly connected to his nerves, and his mind was shaken at the same time. You tricked me. Then he gnashed his teeth and stared at Wang Ling. Even if Wang Ling hadn't said it, Ghost Old Six could sense that Wang Ling had pretended to be arm wrestling him with all his might just now, but in fact, Wang Ling had been playing with him. Wang Ling clearly had the strength to end the match very quickly, but it was like he was playing with a monkey, giving him the illusion that he could take back the outer deity palaces. I'll never let you off. Ghost Old Six trembled with anger. After the outer deity palaces were taken, he had immediately swallowed a bright glazed elixir to suppress his injuries, and at the same time, he released streams of primal chaos chi from his hands. This was a strange hand seal, which made Wang Ling frown at the same time. Gue Old Six's movements were quick, and as the hand seal changed, it expounded on a strange truth of the Great Tao. Unexpectedly, there were many Great Taos that even Wang Ling had never seen fused together in this strange hand seal. And then bang. There was a bang. Ghost Old Six and the hybrid ancient god behind him put their palms together. In that instant, heaven and earth twisted, and a mystical ball of light was summoned in the center of Ghost Old Six's palms. Wang Ling had already focused his king's eye, and through the light ball's screen he saw this summoning magic artifact wrapped in endless charm. He was astonished, because this was the only person Wang Ling had met so far. The only person who had taken out a level 5 chaos sequence weapon. Level 5 creation chaos weapon. Era compass. Chapter 1830. To be honest, this was the first time Wang Ling had seen someone take out a creation-level chaos weapon in a duel. A 5th-ranked chaos weapon usually meant that it had the power to control important nomological laws. The Era Pointer was an existence born from chaos interwoven with the nomological laws of time. It was just making its appearance, but the earth-shattering deterrence it exuded was already overwhelming. Everything around them seemed to be draped in a Taoist robe of time, and signs of collapse appeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. This was the power of aging controlled by the Era Pointer. Thus, the moment he sensed the power of the Era Pointer, Wang Ling acted almost at the same time to stack hundreds of millions of layers on everyone's Immortal King shields. He could sense that the Immortal King shields were weakening under the power of the Era Pointer. Yes, it wasn't that the Era Pointer itself had the power to break the Immortal King shields, but that it was using its immortal nomological laws of time to adjust the spell's effective duration. Once the spell expired, even the Immortal King shields would be as brittle as paper. When the time came, it would be effortless to break them. Wang Ling was secretly astonished. This creation-level chaos weapon was indeed as difficult to deal with as he had imagined. To some extent, it was even more troublesome to deal with than the Grave God, who had inherited Outer God Sothatha's power. With the Era Pointer's reversal of time, almost everything around it was on the verge of collapse. If it wasn't for the Immortal King shields, everyone in number 60 high and the Maelstrom Emperor would have already become living fossils. Even the heavens were affected by the Era Pointer. In the Golden City of Heavens, the walls of the buildings of the universe's 10,000 races began to collapse. Golden powder fell from the walls, and everything entered an old state under the influence of the Era Pointer. Wang Ling felt a sense of discomfort as an overwhelming aura of lethargy washed over him. It's working. That's right. Old Six, that's it. Don't give him any chance. Far away on the other side of the sky, the Holy Race clansmen who were watching the battle through the other universe embryo applauded. They could clearly sense that Wang Ling was being affected by the Era Pointer, and that his actions and thoughts seemed to be much slower than before. Who told him to be so arrogant? The Era Pointer's aging power is an area of effect attack, and the entire heavens will be affected. He thinks he's the god of this world, but when he encounters this creation-grade chaos tool, I'm afraid it's like a scholar meeting a soldier. The Saint Clansman in the distance sneered. Not only does he have to take care of himself, but he also has to take care of those Foundation Establishment and Golden Core ants down there. Their spiritual shields have also lost their effectiveness under the power of aging, and he has to consume his own spiritual energy to constantly add new spiritual shields. If this goes on, no matter how strong he is, once the spiritual energy in his body is exhausted, it will be useless. They judged the situation and discussed it loudly. They all agreed that Gui Laolu had gained the upper hand. But Wang Ling's side was far more resilient than they had imagined. Under normal circumstances, a person who was constantly baptized by the pointer of the era would have long since become a living fossil. Although this young man from Earth seemed to be affected, his appearance was still that of a young man. Gui Laolu thought it was a bit outrageous. It had already been half a century, but Wang Ling's face still looked as childish as ever. It hadn't changed at all. Just how long was this person's lifespan? Yes. It had only been a few minutes since the era pointer had been brought out. But more than half a century had already passed. Wang Ling looked at his hands, which were still as white as jade, and somehow felt that this kind of aging didn't have much of an effect on his body. He had wanted to experience what aging felt like, but he hadn't expected that he wouldn't age at all. Of course, there was something else that Wang Ling hadn't expected. After the era pointer had been adjusted for half a century, the Dao Talisman seal on his body had also completely lost its effectiveness due to the power of aging. In the next breath, Wang Ling's aura was completely released, and an enormous amount of energy overflowed from his body, causing the world to become hazy, as if even heaven and earth had been disturbed and stopped functioning. Wang Ling secretly cursed. He had forgotten to count on the Dao Talisman seal on his body, and never expected that in this state, his power would be completely liberated. Boom. When the Dao Talisman seal completely lost its effectiveness and his power erupted, countless magic rings started to appear on Wang Ling's body. Like a god descending, the era pointer's power of aging was ineffective against him. The magic rings on his body contained a halo of magic immunity, which directly rendered the creation-level chaos weapon useless. Gui Laoyou's expression changed. He had clearly adjusted it to half a century later. He had thought that this youngster would age and become weaker than before, but he had never expected Wang Ling to actually hold back in their fight earlier, and not use all his strength. It was only at this moment that the Dao Talisman seal had lost its effectiveness, and Wang Ling's power completely erupted. All liberated. Many people down below were stupefied, and Lotus Sun's face was filled with other emotions besides astonishment. Fortunately, this wasn't Earth, and there was still room to turn things around. If Wang Ling had been directly unsealed on Earth, the entire planet might have collapsed in an instant. Gui Laolu thought that Wang Ling would become weak due to aging, but he never thought that Wang Ling, whose power had been completely liberated, would be like a demon god. It was just the power of Wang Ling's physical body, but he was already unable to resist it. Boom. Wang Ling charged forward fearlessly. Gui Laoyou's entire body was nailed to the spot by this kind of oppressive force, and he couldn't move even half a step. In a moment of desperation, he could only mobilize the era pointer's nomological power in an attempt to block Wang Ling's attack, forming a net to try and stop him. But Wang Ling had no intention of stopping at all, and the era pointer's nomological net couldn't stop his attack at all. With a click, the pointer was directly knocked askew by Wang Ling's headbutt. Gui Laolu simply couldn't believe what he was seeing. A creation-level chaos weapon. An existence with the power of nomological laws, which was the highest level of the fifth sequence, had actually been knocked askew just like that. At the same time, the Holy Clan members who were watching the battle from a distance simply wanted to cry when they saw this scene. They had thought that Gui Laolu would be able to smoothly win this match after summoning the era pointer, but they never thought that this Earth youngster wouldn't age at all. The older he got, the stronger he got. Even under the effect of the era pointer, his power was directly liberated. Rumble. Wang Ling's headbutt finally hit Gui Laoyou's body like a cannonball from outer space. Accompanied by a burst of golden light, most of Gui Laoyou's body had already been smashed into nothingness by Wang Ling, and blood flowed everywhere. This kind of impact was really too ferocious. After all, Wang Ling's power had been completely liberated, and it really wasn't easy for him to control it. Fortunately, after he broke the era pointer, the previously adjusted time returned to normal, and the Dao Talisman seal also returned from its expired state. Wang Ling secretly breathed a sigh of relief. In fact, during the collision just now, Wang Ling had also been thinking about countermeasures to restore the Dao Talisman seal. This was far more important than killing Gui Laolu. What if it really couldn't be restored? Gui Laoyu's action of summoning the era pointer could directly lead to the destruction of the universe. Chapter 1831. He had been taken down. Even though he had already taken out the era compass, even this creation-level chaos artifact had suffered a devastating blow from the other party's head hammer. He was the sixth protector of the sacred tribe, the most talented youth of the sacred tribe. He had been taught by the Holy King, and was the favorite of the sacred tribe. He had never cared about any alien life outside of the sacred tribe. But Ghost Sixth had never imagined that he would be defeated in such a way. The intense pain of losing half of his body made it difficult for him to calm down in a short period of time. He spat out blood as most of his body was destroyed. This wasn't completely fatal to his physique, but he would have to pay a huge price to fully recover. There was often no need for excuses in a confrontation between experts. Even though Ghost Sixth wasn't convinced, he understood that if Wang Ling's head hammer had been a little more accurate just now, he would have died straight away, and wouldn't even have had the right to stand here. The vital point of a holy race member was the upper body. Only when the upper body was completely destroyed did death occur. Otherwise, there was a possibility of recovery as long as a single cell was left. Old Six actually lost? On the other side of the universe, the rest of the holy race members who were watching the battle had incredulous expressions on their faces. They had never expected an Earth cultivator to be so powerful. The era compass was Holy King's trump card, and he had given it to Ghost Sixth for self-defense back then. He had thought that if he took it out at this critical moment, he would be able to turn the tide and win outright. Who would have thought that half a century later, this young man from Earth who wouldn't age would become even more ferocious than before? How could little brother Six lose? Is this person really an Earthling? Why do I feel like it's very strange? A woman's voice came from among the remaining 5 protectors. She was the 4th protector, and in Ghost Sixth's eyes, the 4th sister. Apart from the Holy King, it was this 4th guardian who usually took care of Ghost Sixth the most. Seeing Ghost Sixth's miserable defeat, this 4th guardian who had a brother complex was clearly anxious, and even started to question Wang Ling's identity as an Earthling. It wasn't entirely her fault for being suspicious. Wang Ling was indeed too strong, beyond the scope of a normal Earth cultivator's understanding, and it gave off the illusion that his worldview had been refreshed. Can't afford to lose? At that moment, Wang Ying's voice came from inside Wang Ling's body. Wang Ling had already done all the physical work, and it was only appropriate for Wang Ying to take over the rest of the negotiation. As the cold voice rang out, a pitch-black silhouette instantly appeared on Wang Ling's body, which then turned into a black shadow that condensed into a human figure with the same face as Wang Ling's. Down below, the number 60 high crowd was dumbfounded again. This is a shadow clone? Hirogwa was puzzled. It doesn't look like it. The hair color is different. It's white. Super Chen frowned and said, also, I feel that his personality is different from Lingzi's. I don't know why, but there's a very abnormal feeling about him. Hearing this, Lotus Sun suddenly felt that Chinese culture was broad and profound. It was very obvious that this pervert and the one who had described Wang Ling were two completely different things in the air. When Wang Ying heard Super Chen's description, the corners of his mouth twitched, but he didn't flare up because he was a student of number 60 high. Sun Yinger, who was hibernating in Lotus Sun's body, immediately burst out laughing. Ha ha ha, I never thought this big would have such a day. In the face of Wang Ying's sudden appearance, the Holy Clan people on the other side of the universe were clearly on guard. They could tell that Wang Ying wasn't weak, and seemed to have a bad temper, which made him even more difficult to provoke than Wang Ling. We don't know what trick you used, but the battle just now doesn't count. If you have the ability, fight us again, and we'll send our people. If you win, we'll give you the epic compass, said one of the Holy Clan people. It was still that guardian for. My lord and I. What do you want this broken needle for? Wang Ying laughed loudly. With a wave of his hand and a snap of his fingers, a treasure that had been sealed in Wang Jibao's pants was immediately projected in front of everyone. It was a towering clock tower. The huge pendulum and clock dial exuded an immortal aura, and the entire clock tower was filled with the law of time, which was dozens of times faster than the epic compass. Epic clock tower. Ghost Old Six and the Holy Clan people were stunned. They recognized the origin of this chaos artifact, and never expected it to be the legendary epic clock tower, which was one of the three pieces of the law of time: the epic compass, the epic clock dial, and the epic clock tower. The epic compass was in their hands, and was the smallest component. In Wang Jibao's pants, the epic clock dial and the epic clock tower had already merged together. So whether or not they had the epic compass didn't mean much to Wang Ling. Then what do you want? These Holy Clan people were instantly speechless and completely dumbfounded. They had thought that they were rich enough to use the epic compass as a wager in an attempt to fight again. But they hadn't expected Wang Ling and Wang Ying to be even more aggressive and directly bring the clock tower. Our request is very simple. Let's talk about the additional conditions first, then the main ones. There are additional conditions. Hee, it's up to you whether you want to listen or not. If you don't. Wang Ying laughed. His figure was like a ghost as he pressed one hand on Ghost Old Six's shoulder, who was recovering from his injuries. This was a threat, because there was a huge amount of energy in his palm. With just a little bit of force, Ghost Old Six would immediately explode without any chance of survival. Don't be impulsive. Let's talk it out. As the Holy Clan's group pet, these Holy Clan people from the other side of the universe naturally didn't want to see Ghost Old Six die in battle. There are 3 additional conditions. Seeing that the negotiations had been formed, Wang Ying said, "First, your Holy King must abandon Tengu and stop interfering in the disputes of Earth's cultivators. Also, release the actual control of Tengu and hand it over to someone we designate. Secondly, the 3 ancient royals you sent earlier, the Skeleton Prince, the Lion-Headed Man, and the Dream Tribe's Meng Liuli, are now our captives and have agreed to join us. You can't take them back. Third, you are not allowed to ally with other cosmic forces that are unfavorable to Earth. If we find out about this, your Holy Clan won't be able to establish a foothold in the universe. Annihilation of your race is only the lightest punishment." After these 3 additional conditions, the Holy Clan people on the other side of the universe fell silent. They were angry but didn't dare to say anything. At this point, Wang Ying coughed lightly and put forward the last main condition. The last main condition is also very simple. You have lost this battle, so you need to compensate for the psychological damage. The Holy Clan people gritted their teeth. The chief protector with the rough voice said, "Say it, how much money or spirit stones do you want?" "It's very cheap." At this time, Wang Ying said with a smile, "A cosmic fetus will do." Chapter 1832. For the Holy Race, this was undoubtedly a great humiliation. Ever since the Holy Race had been founded, they had never compromised with other civilizations. As an ancient civilization that had survived several baptisms since ancient times, their faces were stiff and bitter, and they felt that this was extremely difficult. Did they really have to surrender? At the same time, for them who were familiar with Earth civilization, this behavior seemed to be similar to the daily milk method that was being discussed online. Signing a treaty and raising a white flag in surrender were essentially the same. Wang Ying smiled. "That nightmare fetus isn't much use to you, is it? It's just a telescope and a microphone, and won't be of any real value in your hands. It's better to trade it for this Mr. Sixth's life." He egged them on. Hearing this, the Holy Race protectors all looked at each other. Wang Ying was actually right. The nightmare fetus was indeed a little overkill in their hands. If it wasn't for the power of the Great Old One's bloodline, they probably wouldn't even be able to use its most basic functions. However, they were well aware of the value of the nightmare fetus. Even if it wasn't of any real value now, it was a strategic reserve. Hence, they were very conflicted. The additional conditions could be discussed, but it was really hard for them to decide whether to trade for the nightmare fetus as the main condition. The point was that as protectors, they didn't have the right to choose, and everything depended on the Holy King. We can accept the additional conditions at the beginning, but we can't make a decision on this matter. However, we are unable to make a decision on this matter. We need to seek the opinion of His Highness the Holy King. In the end, the chief protector with the rough voice spoke. Okay. Wang Ying nodded and said, I can also return the person to you first. But this little brother has already been hit by a nomological bomb called Emperor Killer. If we don't reach an agreement in the end, we'll have to take the person with us. Emperor Killer. The holy race people were stupefied. They had never expected Wang Ling and Wang Ying to have a way to set up nomological bombs. And they had actually agreed to return the person first? Hearing this, Protector 4 immediately sneered and said from the other side of the universe, they're too confident. If they're going to return sixth brother just like that, why don't we just study how to defuse the bomb? No, since they dared to give the person to us first, they must be confident that we won't be able to defuse the bomb. Hee, I think they're blindly confident. The five of us, in addition to His Highness the Holy King. How could he not deal with a law bomb? If it really doesn't work, we can help sixth brother reconstruct his body. As long as he can come back, there are many ways to help sixth brother escape. After a few rounds of discussion, Wang Ying finally received an affirmative answer from the few sacred clan protectors. It was the great protector who transmitted his voice through the universe devil fetus. The deadline is set at 5 days. Within 5 days, we will definitely give you an accurate answer. Hearing that, Wang Ying only smiled. All right. Then we will wait for you for 5 days. However, you have to fulfill the additional conditions first. Regarding this, you can make the decision, right? Of course. Chief Guardian said affirmatively. In fact, we've almost finished our research on modern human cultivators. I didn't intend to continue hiding. Wang Ying chuckled. He just took those words as a joke. Then he let go of his hand on Ghost Six's shoulder, and instantly opened his king's eye to send Ghost Six out of the infinite worlds with its power. It lasted for 5 days. The universe devil fetus would be used in exchange for sixth protector's life. Wang Ling and Wang Ying naturally knew that the other party would definitely try to remove this law bomb related to the Emperor Killer, but there had to be a reason why it was called a law bomb. This was an unsolvable bomb that would follow the soul. Whether it was transferring the body or reconstructing the soul, it was useless. As long as the caster didn't remove it, any other method would be useless. At the same time, Wang Ling started to clean up the mess in front of him as he led everyone out of the world. At the same time, he removed the Immortal King shields on everyone. Super Chun, Hero Gua and the others felt like they had just woken up from a dream, and everything seemed to have happened in a daze. When they returned to the car, Super Chun was sitting in the back seat with his arms crossed as he muttered to Hero Gua, which made Wang Ling sweat profusely. Old Gua, don't you feel like you forgot something? Super Chun asked with a frown. That's normal. Hero Gua replied very casually. Actually, sometimes I also feel like this. It's like my mind suddenly goes blank, and I lose a small piece of my memory. For example, I want to do something, but then I suddenly can't remember it, and I freeze on the spot. It's only after a long while that I come back to my senses. This is a sign of anxiety. But after what you said just now, I indeed feel like there are some things I can't remember. Now that you mention it, I feel the same way. I feel like I'm missing something very important from my memory. At that moment, Li Yue also raised her hand. As Li Yue spoke, even the people in the Maelstrom Emperor nodded one after another. Super Chun laughed. It's just a passing remark. It can't really be such a coincidence, right? Collective amnesia? I'm afraid we collectively saw something we shouldn't have, and our memories were erased. Wang Ling, Lotus Sun, Fangxing. Early on Monday morning, January 5th, the prosecutor's office withdrew the criminal accusation that Lotus Sun was suspected of murder for hire. Scarlet Orchid Association, Madame Raven, Michael ACI, and the Heavenly Tao Alliance in Glio City, which was led by Levis, had initially focused their fire on Huagua Water Curtain Group and Battle Sect. It ended with the four forces shedding all pretense of cordiality and fighting fiercely. The Heavenly Tao Alliance was the mediating force, But in the end, under the instigation of the fake pope played by Levis, they were also involved. No one had expected such a dispute. Before the people from number 60 High left Glio City, Madame Raven handed over control of Volwolf Supermarket to Lotus Sun as promised. Although the recording this time didn't go smoothly, I'm still a person who keeps her promises. Lotus Sun took the materials from Volwolf Supermarket and frowned deeply as she looked at them. Madame Raven, there's something I want to ask you. Please speak, Miss Sunday. Madame Raven was still sitting in an elegant posture, and showed no signs of having been involved in a power dispute or beaten up. The chaos this time was all part of Madame Raven's plan, right? At that moment, Lotus Sun suddenly asked, if I'm right, you don't belong to the church. You belong to Lord Yuan Venerate. Chapter 1833. Perhaps it was out of the sensitivity of an entrepreneur's successor, but after a comprehensive analysis, Lotus Sun finally came up with an answer that sounded unexpected, but seemed completely reasonable. This was a conversation between her and Lavin, and there were no outsiders in the room. Seeing Madame Lavin silently take out a cigar from her pocket and light it, Lotus Sun began to reason further. This variety show's recording has caused a huge mess, and it definitely can't be broadcast anymore. Madam, you suffered a loss, yet you're still willing to transfer the control of Volwolf to me as promised. This doesn't make sense. You think it doesn't make sense? Madame Lavin said. The entire Glio City is my property, and I'm just fulfilling my promise. No need to make a fuss. I just think it's very sudden. You think it's sudden? Madame Lavin smiled meaningfully. I don't think it's sudden. This is just like Master Huang, who suddenly paid the fake county magistrate to suppress bandits in Goose City. Everything was just part of the plan. In the end, Miss Sun and I each obtained our own benefits. It seems that Madame Lavin has already admitted that she is Mr. Yuan Venerate's person. Lotus Sun asked politely. Yes or no? Does it still matter to Miss Sun now? Madame Lavin paused and said, the cause of everything was indeed because of Mr. Yuan Venerate's consideration of the balance between the various forces. It's just that Mr. Yuan Venerate and I didn't expect them to fight during the variety show's recording. This way, Mr. Yuan Venerate has a reason to find trouble with them and weaken their foundation. Is this what Madame meant by benefits? Yes. Lavin nodded honestly. The loss of Volwolf isn't a loss to me at all, because I can get a better project from Mr. Yuan Venerate. Of course, it was actually Mr. Yuan Venerate's intention to transfer the control of Volwolf to you. You're right. As an entrepreneur, it's impossible to give away your money for nothing when you've already suffered a loss. There are conditions, right? Lotus Sun asked. Very simple conditions. At this point, Madame Lavin took out a delicate notebook wrapped in pure gold from her arms. She clearly felt a sense of weight when she handed it to Lotus Sunday. At this moment, Madame Lavin said slowly, I heard that you know the Grey Sect Master? Huh. Lotus Sun was clearly stunned. The Yuan Venerate said that this is a literary organization. Also, the president of this organization is from number 60 High. You should know him, right? As far as I know, he's a greedy and hot-blooded man. Lotus Sun was shocked. She suspected that the person Madame Raven was talking about was a combination of Super Chun and Hero Gua. Of course, what shocked her even more was that she didn't expect the Grey Church's influence to be so great that even the head of a cultivation country knew about it. After thinking for a moment, Lotus Sun nodded and said, I know him. This is the notebook of the Yuan Venerate's grandson. He has been very interested in literature recently, and hopes to join the Grey Sect. If it's possible, I hope you can help the Grey Church's hierarch sign his name on the title page of the notebook. Lotus Sun frowned. She was very careful, repeatedly wondering if there was any other purpose or trap in this. However, his cautious expression made Madame Lavin laugh again. Look at you so cautious. It doesn't matter. Whether I get this signature or not, it won't affect Sir Yuan Venerate's decision to order me to give the Volwolf to you. If you have any misgivings, just return this notebook to me. As soon as she said this, Lotus Sun suddenly felt that her status was still too low. Compared with these foreign female entrepreneurs who had been on the battlefield for a long time, she indeed lacked experience. This was clearly a way to advance by retreating. Lotus Sun had no choice but to agree, losing face. After all, Lotus Sun had always considered herself to be magnanimous, so it would be a little too unmagnanimous to refuse like this. She was cautious because she was worried that the existence of the Grey Church would be used by people with ulterior motives. In Lotus Sun's opinion, it wasn't a good thing for the head of a cultivation country to suddenly set his eyes on such a literary organization. Lotus Sun even suspected that there might be some problems with this notebook, but she didn't dare to check it directly in front of Madame Lavin. Thus, after thinking it over, she went with the flow and said, "I can sign it. But the president hasn't gone abroad, so I'm afraid I'll have to send it to you after I return." Hearing this, Madame Lavin hurriedly nodded. "That's good. Let's leave it at that. Your case has been withdrawn and the restraining order has been lifted, so returning to China is no longer a problem." Then I'll sign it and send it to you as soon as I return." Lotus Sun said this feigned ignorance, but in fact, she already had a countermeasure in mind. For the time being, Lotus Sun still wasn't very clear about the intention behind asking for the signature of the leader of the Grey Church. But given her current realm, she could still test whether or not the notebook had been tampered with after she went back. If that didn't work, there was still Wang Ling. She could tell him about this matter, and let him use his power of sight to see if there was anything fishy about it. At noon, everyone from number 60 High set out on their journey. Before they left, Whirlpool Imperial High School's freshman representative in Glio City, who was also the captain of the 6 child prodigies who had participated in the Variety Challenge along with number 60 High School this time, led the other 5 great magical powers to officially join the Grey Church and announce the establishment of a Grey Church branch in Glio City. After Sun Island, this was the second cultivation country to have a Grey Church branch. Like Sun Island's Jiudao High School, Whirlpool Imperial High School in Glio City was also a famous high school in this cultivation country. It had always been number 1 in the national ranking list of cultivation high schools. Wang Ling and Lotus Sun were deeply moved by the fact that these 2 ace high schools now had the shadow of number 60 High School. Wang Ling hadn't cared much about Lotus Sun's establishment of the Grey Church back then. He just felt that it wasn't a bad idea to have the Grey Church cover for him. Who knew that Lotus Sun could actually manage the Grey Church so well? Wang Ling was so shocked that he couldn't speak. This was the time when cultural exports were needed. In an era of cultural invasion from various major cultivation countries, promoting local cultivation culture overseas was truly something to be proud of. Back then, this speck of ash in an era had seemed very light and without much weight, but it had become an unintentional seed of cultural exports. Now, Wang Ling was a little curious about how far the Grey Church could develop in the end. Chapter 1834. The storm in Glio City gradually subsided. That Yuan Venerate of Mishio Nation had used Raven as a chess piece to achieve his initial goal. To deal a severe blow to Myoxi, the Heavenly Tao Alliance, the Heavenly Dog and the other small forces, reshuffling the big forces and balancing them out. After this matter, the Tengu seemed to still be under the jurisdiction of the church, but the actual pope was Levis, and Levis had also become a member of the war sect. Thus, Tengu had essentially developed into an intelligence network under Battle Sect's banner, but its internal structure was still very chaotic. Although those who could become Tengu were all elites, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal thought that they still had to set stricter standards. At the very least, they had to pass a moral test first. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal couldn't allow some people to wear Tengu's cloak and do whatever they wanted in the intelligence business. Thus, these days, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had been thinking about a strict reset structure, as well as a reshuffling plan specifically for Tengu. On the other side, Kyuko Ryoko had also returned to Huaxiao Nation with Qinzong and Xiang Yi. They had been a lot of help in carrying out the mission in Glio City this time. At the same time, they had used the Kyuko family's power to deal with the major black and white bandits. And in the end, they had helped Lotus Sun clear her name in a very short period of time. Most importantly, the wonderful combination of Kiyomiya Ryoko, Xiang Yi and Qinzong had not been fully understood by the public in Glio City. They were like a small knife hidden in the depths of a cotton-padded coat, lying dormant and waiting for a fatal strike. Lotus Sun had never liked to owe people favors, but this time, she knew that she owed a big one. Later, he would have to find a chance to properly thank Ryoko Kamiya. It was the morning self-study session on Tuesday, January 6, the second day after Wang Ling and the others had returned to China. The class was a lot livelier than usual as a number of students from other classes came to join in on the fun and asked Wang Ling and the others about their participation in the variety show. Most people didn't know the truth and only knew that Lotus Sun had taken a group of people to participate in Mishio Nation's variety show to win glory for the school. But there were many different opinions in the class as to what program they were participating in, and everyone had their own version of it. As a result, many people came to class early in the morning to ask Lotus Sun for confirmation. Lotus Sun, what kind of variety show are you participating in? Running around ripping off name tags? Or do you want to go on a trip with another high school group and get into a fight on the way? Judging from this reaction, it shouldn't be the ones mentioned above. Could it be that a group of people went to the wilderness to open up wastelands and build a home with local materials? No, that's not it. Lotus Sun was a little dazed by the barrage of questions. None of them? Don't tell me he's participating in some talent show. Someone suddenly exclaimed. A while ago, there was even a talent show that printed the QR code on the spirit milk boxes in order to help the older brothers and sisters vote for them. Some people just scanned the QR code without drinking the milk to support the person they liked. They poured out all the milk. What a waste. Of course, this kind of behavior is wrong, but the variety show we're participating in is similar to a secret room. It has nothing to do with this. Lotus Sun had no choice but to explain. Also, something went wrong during the recording, so this variety show probably won't be able to air. At that moment, the number 60 high students who had come to watch the show sighed one after another after hearing the truth. Sigh, what a pity. Jiang Bai from class 2 said. Feng Xing and Li Yue from our class also went, so I heard a little about it. It's said that our number 60 high's opponent this time is the top high school in Mishio Nation. Maelstrom Imperial Palace. Oh, it's them. I've heard of this school. Maelstrom Imperial Palace has produced 6 new child prodigies this year. They're already at the golden core stage in grade 1, just like the teachers. They're terrifyingly strong. That's right. The key is that they don't eat much cultivation resources. I heard that they rely purely on hard work and talent to get there. This is a tradition in Maelstrom Imperial Palace in Glio City. Every day is a day where they break through their limits through completely enclosed pressure training. That's why a lot of people drop out midway because they can't take it anymore. But those who stay are the cream of the crop. A student who was in the know went on and on. They rely on this extreme cultivation method to cultivate all the way to grade 3. Only the students who make it to the end will Maelstrom Imperial Palace pool their resources to help them break through again. A lot of people have already been overwhelmed by this training method and dropped out of school, so the resources are relatively more concentrated. The students at the top who persevere to the end can eat more cultivation resources. Doesn't that mean they'll be even more heaven-defying when they cultivate to grade 3? I heard that in Maelstrom Imperial Palace, it's not like there haven't been students who almost reached the nascent soul stage in high school in the past. Given their life-or-death cultivation method, they'll be at the late golden core stage by grade 3 at the very least. Late golden core stage. That's a level that a lot of people can only reach in their 4th or 5th year in a 10-year cultivation university. So whether it's in Glio City or the other provinces and cities in Mishio Nation, Maelstrom Imperial Palace's combat strength is number 1. If we can compete with them, it'll actually be very helpful for us to study our opponents in other cultivation countries. Don't worry, there's plenty of time in the future. There'll always be a chance. At that moment, Superchen suddenly spoke up. It was a pity for Superchen that the variety show challenge had suddenly stopped recording this time. Deep down in the old Chen family's bones was the desire to compete with the strong. The stronger the opponent, the easier it was to stimulate one's potential. Superchen knew that the people in Maelstrom Imperial Palace weren't weak, but if number 60 high joined forces, Super Chin felt that they still had a chance of winning. They might not be able to beat them one-on-one, but in terms of teamwork, number 60 high had been through so much, and their teamwork wouldn't be any weaker than that of any other high school. In fact, when Super Chin said there's plenty of time in the future, Wang Ling already had a feeling that it might not be too long before he met Maelstrom Imperial Palace again and again. During the lunch break that day, Wang Ling saw Lotus Sun writing the afternoon class schedule on the blackboard, and at the same time, her gaze kept sweeping over him. Wang Ling guessed that Lotus Sun most likely had something to say to him. He looked down at his textbook and pretended that nothing had happened. Sure enough, after Lotus Sun finished writing on the blackboard, she came looking for him. It was because of Madame Lavin's request for her autograph. Lotus Sun had already checked the notebook with the pure gold edge several times and hadn't found anything wrong with it, so she wanted to show it to Wang Ling. "Wang Ling, can you help me check it?" She looked at the youngster with a smile, and was just about to take the notebook out of her storage bag when a group of boys lurking in the corridor suddenly rushed over. "What? Which bold mascot wants to check classmate Lotus Sun's body?" "Damn it. So it's a body check. How can you cultivate?" Agitated, the group of boys swarmed over, and the originally quiet classroom immediately turned into chaos. Everyone scrambled to be the first to rush in, giving Wang Ling a fright. In a moment of desperation, Wang Ling had no choice but to sigh in his heart. He snapped his fingers to pause time, then put his hand gently on Lotus Sun's shoulder, and moved her to the student union office. He then snapped his fingers again to undo the pause. Lotus Sun flushed red to her ears. "Sorry, Wang Ling. I didn't expect so many people to be eavesdropping. I think it's safer to come to the student union office next time." As she said this, she handed the notebook to Wang Ling. Wang Ling only glanced at it before returning it. Is there a problem?" Lotus Sun asked. "No," Wang Ling replied, his words as precious as gold. Lotus Sun nodded with a relieved expression. "That's good. It seems I was thinking too much." As soon as she said this, a girl from another class suddenly stumbled into the student union office and fell to the ground. Her face was red to the ears as she searched for her glasses on the floor and apologized. "So sorry. President Lotus Sun, I didn't hear anything. I didn't hear you say you were thinking about classmate Wang at all. I clearly said I was thinking too much. Not that I was thinking about classmate Wang." Lotus Sun dropped her forehead into her hand, feeling like her face was so hot it could roast meat. "Oh, I see, then it's fine." The girl found her glasses, then hurriedly put them on and got up from the floor. Looking at the girl's face, Lotus Sun finally asked, "I remember you're from regular class 1, classmate Chin Chin?" "Yes. It's me." The girl in glasses looked excited. "As expected of President Lotus Sun, you're very capable. I heard that the student union office can accept commissions. Is that true?" "Commissions?" Lotus Sun and Wang Ling blinked at the same time. "That's right. I heard there's something called the Gray Sect. They can help people solve their problems or something." Lotus Sun was speechless. She was well aware that this help people solve their problems actually referred to the fact that the Gray Sect could help its followers, as well as students who had recommendation letters from their followers, solve the problem of memorizing books. After all, the Gray Sect was essentially just a literary organization. What Lotus Sun had never expected was that the matter would actually spread like this. Just as she was about to refuse, this girl called Chun Chin had an expectant expression on her face as she grabbed Lotus Sun's hand. "President, can you let me finish my story? Just for a while. I heard that you can directly contact the leader of the Gray Sect. He's a very sensitive person. Maybe he can help me solve my problems. Of course, it's fine even if you don't accept my commission. But I'm not a freeloader. Since I'm thick-skinned enough to ask for help, I naturally have to show some sincerity. I understand." This girl called Chun Chin said, "Our school's canteen is actually outsourced to my father. If President Lotus Sun agrees to help me pass on the message, whether or not you accept it, you can choose whatever you want in the canteen for the year. Of course, if President Lotus Sun doesn't like this privilege, you can give it to someone else." "Then are there any new snacks in the school canteen this year?" Lotus Sun asked. "There aren't any new snacks, but there are new flavors like potato chips, potato sticks, crispy noodle snacks, and so on, Chin said. Hearing this, Lotus-san took a deep breath and stepped forward to take Chin's hand. Sister, you've taken a wider path. Chin, ah. Lotus-san. What I mean is, you can boldly tell me your dreams now. Chapter 1835. Chin knew that she didn't have much to offer. The students were still very poor, and her target was the young miss of Huagua Water Curtain Group. No matter how much money she offered, the other party probably wouldn't be interested, right? So before coming to the student union, she had specially asked the other students for their opinions. In the end, she had come to the conclusion that she could use the convenience store's privileges to entice her with snacks. When Super Chun had told Chin about this back then, she had found it inconceivable. How could the young miss of Huagua Water Curtain Group be interested in the snacks in the convenience store? She hadn't expected it to be so effective. The first step had finally been taken. Because her request was very strange, the key was whether she could smoothly convey it to the head of the Grey Church to help her out. As she pondered this, Chin took out her phone, opened the photo album, and looked at the screenshot inside. It was a screenshot of a short video of a girl with glasses and a long ponytail. Lotus-san took a closer look, and then compared it to Chin's appearance. In the end, she revealed a suspicious expression. This isn't you, right? Chin became excited. That's right. But don't you think she looks a lot like me? Lotus-san nodded. Indeed. They're practically twins. Chin. I suddenly discovered it on a short video platform a week ago. I was very surprised at the time. I never thought that there would be someone in the world who looks exactly like me. Lotus-san nodded and immediately understood what Chin meant. So you want to find her? Chin. I asked my parents if I had a younger sister or elder sister apart from me. In the end, they gave me a good scolding. They insisted that I was an only child. Lotus-san sighed. After all, the chances of finding someone who looks almost exactly like you and is a long-lost sister are really low. But I still want to find her. Chin didn't give up. On one hand, I want to satisfy my curiosity, and on the other hand, I really have a feeling that this girl might be related to me. It looks like she's about the same age as you. So you think she might also be a student. So you want to use the Grey Church's influence in all the major schools to find this person, right? At this point, Lotus-san suddenly understood everything. However, there was still one thing that she couldn't figure out. She felt that Chin hadn't told her the whole story. Student Chin, if you really want me to ask the Grey Church's leader for help, it's best if you tell him everything from the beginning to the end. Lotus-san said. I feel like you're hiding something. These words caused Chin to fall silent. After a moment of silence, she hesitantly opened a short video app and typed the name on the screenshot into the search box. Lotus-san and Wang Ling saw this scene at the same time. When Chin pressed the confirm button, something strange happened. Immediately, a system notification popped up on the short video application. No such person found. Did they change their names? Wang Ling asked. If it's just a name change, the user's UID will not change, Chin quickly replied. But even after I entered the UID, I still can't find her. So it's cancelled? Lotus-san was also puzzled. I don't think it's cancelled. I've been observing her for several days. She mainly posts food videos on her short video app, and it's very regular. Every night at around 6 o'clock, she posts a video of herself eating delicious food. There's no waste, and there's no inappropriate content. It definitely wasn't the platform that deleted her. The more Chin spoke, the more solemn her expression became. The day before I couldn't find her account. She said that she would meet me at 6 o'clock tomorrow night. Although she doesn't have a lot of fans following her, how could a perfectly fine person just disappear like that? The whole thing did give off a very strange feeling. After hearing this, Wang Ling and Lotus-san looked at each other for a while. Then Lotus-san nodded seriously and looked at Chin. Then, Student Chin, I understand your request. I'll try to get in touch with the leader of the Grey Church. If there are any new developments, I'll contact you in time. Thank you so much. No matter what happens in the end, I'll still pay you the commission fee, said Chun-Chin. The commission fee wasn't a big problem. The main thing was that there was something very wrong with the incident itself. It wasn't just Lotus Sun. Even Wang Ling's curiosity was piqued, and he sensed that something wasn't quite right. If it was as Chun-Chin said, it would indeed be a little strange for such a living person to suddenly cancel her account. Furthermore, this person might have some sort of connection with Chun-Chin, so it was normal for Chun-Chin to have misgivings. It was like watching someone else in the same world suddenly vanish from the face of the earth. Perhaps it was an instinctive reaction, and it was only natural for her to be worried. But then again, this was the first time that Lotus Sun had taken the initiative to accept a real commission from the student party. Even she herself didn't know how things would develop in the end. Right now, she could only do her best. Jiudao and High School's Grey Church branch very quickly received an invitation from Lotus Sun for a joint investigation. Having an elite like Sparrow by the side of Jiudao and High School's head of Grey Church branch, Jiudao Sasaki, was a huge boost to the investigation. Lotus Sun's train of thought was very clear. She planned to have Sparrow start with that short video app and see what on earth was going on. In the end, less than 10 minutes later, Sparrow sent news. Lotus Sun was flabbergasted. Because according to Sparrow's investigation, the short video app had already been hacked by a hacker. Furthermore, the other party's goal was very clear: to directly delete the account of the girl who looked very much like classmate Chun-Chin. This was a deliberate act, but an ordinary person wouldn't be able to do anything about it in this situation, and could only interpret it as an official ban. But the truth was that this had nothing to do with the officials at all. Hacking into a short video app just to delete a girl's account? Lotus Sun frowned when she received the news, and felt that things weren't as simple as they seemed. The only way to get to the bottom of the matter now was to find out where the girl was. But because the account information had already been deleted, there was no way to investigate it at all. The only way to get to the bottom of the matter now was to find out where the girl was. But because the account information had already been deleted, there was no way to investigate it at all. But the only way to break through was the unknown hacker who had hacked into the short video app. Can I entrust this to Brother Wang Ming? At that moment, Lotus Sun looked at Wang Ling. Wang Ling nodded. He and Lotus Sun were thinking the same thing. Chapter 1836. This was Wang Ling's first time encountering a commission from a student. In the past, he had always avoided it because he felt that it would cause him trouble, and to a certain extent, risked exposing his true strength. But now Wang Ling really felt that he had changed. Perhaps it was because he had experienced too many earth-shattering events, but when it came to this kind of small commission, he felt indifferent. As for exposing his strength, in any case, Lotus Sun now knew his situation and would cover for him, so he didn't have to worry too much. Of course, the most important thing was that Wang Ling realized that he wasn't a cold-blooded person. When he wore the Dao Talisman seal, his emotions didn't fluctuate much. When he was in primary and middle school, he had often been scolded for being a cold-blooded animal, but life in high school seemed to be different. He realized that he sometimes liked to meddle in other people's business. When he accepted this commission with Lotus Sun, Wang Ling was well aware that it definitely wasn't because of the commission fee the other party had promised. Did he look like someone who wouldn't budge at the mention of crispy noodle snacks? Although Wang Ling didn't know why he had become so warm-hearted, he was in a very good mood, because this was probably the closest he had ever been to a normal person. In the afternoon, it was Old Antique's theory of history class, which specifically mentioned the conversion between spirit stones and immortal gold. Holding a piece of chalk, Old Antique wrote a long series of conversion formulas on the blackboard, leaving everyone speechless. This was supposed to be Old Pan's job in the Dao Talismans class, but in the end Old Antique had snatched it away. On the other hand, Old Antique's cultivation knowledge was indeed very extensive. In Wang Ling's view, Old Antique wasn't just good at teaching theory of history. He was also competent in other subjects. He was a true jack of all trades. I saw the formulas in the paper in middle school. It's not a test now, but you can take note of them if you're interested. After writing, Old Antique habitually wiped his chalk-covered hands with a rag on the table, and then continued to say, there are two ways to extract spirit stones. One is to collect spirit ore and process it with a machine, and the other is to create spirit stones by absorbing spirit chi from the natural world and injecting it into a machine. The created spirit stones can then be combined with some other materials and transformed into the more valuable immortal gold. The former is more efficient, but the natural spirit ores are often limited. If they are overexploited, sooner or later, there will be a situation where there are no ores to use. As for the artificial input of spirit stones, although it is inexhaustible, the efficiency is very low. On the other hand, if one were to engage in this work for a long time, it may have a certain impact on one's cultivation foundation, or even damage one's spirit root. Actually, Wang Ling had heard this from Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal before. Previously, when the Heavenly Hound was still under the control of the Sacred Race, the Sacred Race had planned to have the Heavenly Hound launch a Spirit Stone trade war against the Huagua Water Curtain Group. In the end, the Heavenly Hound was swallowed up by the Battle Sect before they could do so. Back then, Heavenly Dog had planned to empty the Spirit Stone market and cause Huagua Water Curtain Group and Battle Sect to suffer losses for no reason. Wang Ling himself had also been prepared to save the market. It was nothing more than artificially created spirit stones. With his output power, if he were to continue producing spirit stones for a day, he might just become the richest man in the world. At this time, the class was talking about the problem of artificial input of spiritual energy to create spirit stones that could harm the body. Wang Ling wasn't worried about this at all. Although his output power was high, it wouldn't have any impact on the body. There wouldn't be a problem with regular input of spirit energy into spirit stones. As long as one didn't work continuously or was fatigued, there wouldn't be any impact. What he was worried about was that some black-hearted factories would continue to exploit the labor force in order to make money. Doesn't the country prohibit it? Someone raised his hand and asked curiously. There are clear rules on working hours for artificial spirit stones. All cultivators who are employed to input spirit energy into machines can't work more than 5 hours a day, and have to change shifts when the 5 hours are up, Old Antique said. This is a hard and fast rule for all regular spirit stone processing plants. If they don't follow this standard, once the regulatory authorities find out, the company and the processing plant involved will be fined up to 30 times the price. Teacher, you said regular, but are there any that aren't? Superchin asked at that moment. The market is so big, it's inevitable that there will be a few fish that slip through the net. After all, there's a saying, the most profitable projects are in the cultivation criminal law. For the sake of profit, people sometimes take risks out of desperation and do things that they clearly know are against the rules, but they still have to bite the bullet and do it. All parties have been cracking down on illegal factories over the years, and it's been very effective. Saying this, Old Antique couldn't help sighing. Come to think of it, a few days ago, I saw a satirical cartoon drawn by a very famous CG cartoonist online, specifically targeting those black-hearted factories. Wu Hapicio? That's right, that's him. Old Antique nodded. But very quickly, this CG cartoon was censored. I don't know if it poked someone's sore spot or not. What on earth did teacher Wu Hapicio draw? This is a short cartoon about a black-hearted factory boss who uses technical means to create a large number of cloned cultivators to continuously produce spirit stones for himself. Old Antique said with a reminiscing expression. Those poor cloned cultivators are constantly squeezed until their bodies are overdrawn. At that time, the black-hearted boss will unhesitatingly abandon them. Their bodies will be broken down and sent back to the furnace to be rebuilt as new clones. Then they will continue to work for the black-hearted boss, forming a cycle. After the story was told, everyone in the class shuddered at the same time. There was no doubt that this was a short cartoon with a slightly thrilling, terrifying and suspenseful flavor. Just listening to it made people shudder. As expected of teacher Wu Hapicio, someone in class exclaimed in admiration. Usually, when everyone went to school, they would be faced with homework when they got home. It was fine on weekends, But on a normal working day, almost no one would pay much attention to what was happening online. If it was posted and then deleted, it wouldn't attract much attention. Everyone in class sank into discussion at Old Antique's words. But Wang Ling's and Lotus Sun's expressions were clearly a little gloomy. Wang Ling always had a very strange feeling about Old Antique. Every time he felt that Old Antique was deliberately hinting at something in class, he also felt that it was just some kind of strange coincidence. Clones, and that short video blogger who looked exactly like classmate Chen Qin, but had disappeared into thin air. Wang Ling had a hunch that there might be some kind of connection between the two. Set a small goal first, like 1 second. Remember, bookseller's house. Chapter 1837. It was still the Cultivation Training Center. After school that day, Lotus Sun immediately put on the nine-tailed fox mask, changed into traditional Chinese clothes, and rushed over. She had asked Jiang Yingying to train here. The whole training session took about an hour, and she had to meet up with Wang Ling and Chen Qin right after that. She had wanted to refuse at first, but she had already stood Jiang Yingying up several times because she had gone abroad a few days ago. If she didn't come today, she was worried that Jiang Yingying would become suspicious. Pretty sister. Jiang Yingying wasn't idle either. She arrived at the training center 10 or so minutes ahead of Lotus Sun, and didn't waste a single minute as she directly started to wield the big sword according to Lotus Sun's instructions. When Lotus Sun arrived, Jiang Yingying greeted her with a smile on her face, beads of sweat rolling down her cheeks. You're working hard. Then let's hurry up and train, Lotus Sun said. Okay. After practicing for 10 or so minutes, Jiang Yingying suddenly asked, Pretty sister, what's wrong? Why do I feel like you're a little distracted today? Sorry, a little. Lotus Sun admitted bluntly. Even a disciple could see that her Shifu was absent-minded, especially when she was wearing a mask. This kind of absent-mindedness was a little too obvious. The reason for her absent-mindedness was very simple. Maybe it was because of Chen Qin, but more than that, it was because of Wang Ling. She actually hadn't expected Wang Ling to be willing to directly intervene in this matter and participate in the first Grey Church mission with her. He had thought that Wang Ling would definitely find this matter very boring and ignore it. In the end, this blockhead didn't play by the rules at all. Lotus Sun's heart was a little flustered, because she wasn't very sure if going on a mission together was considered having a good impression of her. Yingying, do you remember what I mentioned to you last time? I know, that senior brother's boyfriend. Jiang Yingying laughed. I knew that pretty sister's absent-mindedness today probably had something to do with him. Lotus Sun hesitated, then said, It's like this, I'm going on a mission with him. The point is that he has never been interested in such a mission before. Then isn't this progress? You think it's progress? I think so, Jiang Yingying said. If I don't have any feelings for you, how could I go on a mission with you? There's a commission fee, and it's a commission fee that he can't refuse. Hey, so it turns out that the cultivators of the upper echelons are also obsessed with money. No matter what, Sister Rongrong, I think this is a great opportunity. At the very least, you can use this mission to test the waters. But I'm afraid I'll mess it up. I don't think so. If this senior brother is still willing to carry out the mission with you when you're acting rashly, doesn't that prove that he's interested in you? All of a sudden, Lotus Sun came to a realization. Jiang Yingying didn't seem to have a lot of experience in love. Instead, she was purely a naive girl who had read too many romantic dramas and mangas. Nowadays, the setting of a rash female lead isn't very likable. And this was also one of the reasons why so many girls liked to watch TV shows where beautiful men and beautiful men appreciated each other. Lotus Sun dropped her forehead into her hand. What everyone wanted to see wasn't the plot of a radiant male lead rescuing a naive and sweet Mary Sue who acted rashly. What they wanted to see was a sweet interaction between a normal female lead and a normal male lead who wouldn't cause trouble. In short, after talking with Jiang Yingying, Lotus Sun understood one thing. That was that Jiang Yingying's love experience didn't have any substantial reference value. She could even reverse the situation based on Jiang Yingying's experience. In class, Wang Ling and Lotus Sun were inspired by what Old Antique had hinted at. Now that they had been inspired, the next step was to verify their ideas. First of all, it was impossible for a living person to disappear for no reason. If that video blogger had really run into danger, Wang Ling felt that there would definitely be some clues left behind. In the modern cultivation world, there were too many ways to uncover the truth. Even if Wang Ling didn't use his strange spells, the cultivation police would still be able to find a flaw with their existing technology. Corpse-dissolving water, which had once been popular in the cultivation world, actually also existed now. Pouring a drop of it on a corpse after a murder would cause it to completely evaporate in a very short period of time, leaving no trace behind. In troubled times, this method had once been a must-have magic weapon for major forces to secretly compete with each other. However, this miraculous liquid that could destroy corpses and leave no traces behind could now be detected by modern cultivation techniques. For example, the elemental camera. After a cultivator died, the spirit root in their body would often leave traces of the elements in the air that corresponded to the spirit root. By using the elemental camera to capture a possible crime scene, one could see the outline of a corpse outlined by natural elements. Of course, it would be even more convenient for Wang Ling to go over. He didn't need a camera, he could do it with the king's eye. The gray and white cafe on Student Street near number 60 High School had already become a gathering point for Grey Church disciples. After her training with Jiang Yingying, Lotus Sun had immediately rushed over. At that moment, Chen Qin and Wang Ling had already been waiting in the cafe for a long time. On the way over, Lotus Sun had given herself a Grey Church leader's decree, which was mainly for Chen Qin to read. It clearly stated that the leader of the Grey Church was already aware of this matter, and had given full authority to Lotus Sun, the head of the Grey Church branch at number 60 High School, as well as Grey Church disciple Wang Ling, to handle the matter. It was quite amazing that the Grey Church had been founded in the first place because of the essay called Substitute, which Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch had written for Wang Ling at the Nine Dragon Mountain Conclave, and because of the golden phrase, a speck of ash in the age. In the essay, Wang Ling had been packaged as a composition genius. But the truth was that most of the disciples who joined the Grey Church thought that the essay had been written by the leader of the Grey Church. Naturally, Wang Ling's tampering with most people's memories in order to rationalize everything was part of this. Now that he was just a Grey Church disciple, this was completely reasonable. After all, he was just a composition writer. What the hell did the Grey Church know? Student Lotus Sun, you're finally here. Chen Qin and Wang Ling had already been sitting in the cafe's private room for a long time. As soon as Lotus Sun arrived, she looked like she was about to cry, as if she had seen a life-saving straw. What's wrong? Lotus Sun was startled. Student Wang Ling and I have been sitting here for a long time, but he actually hasn't said a word. Classmate Chen Qin looked worried. I suspect that classmate Wang Ling is broken. Wang Ling and Lotus Sun. Chapter 1838. Wang Ling had never thought that his silent contemplation would actually cast such a huge psychological shadow on Chen Qin. Usually, when Wang Ling was thinking carefully about something, he would enter a meditative state like just now. Even if his eyes were open, everything in front of him would temporarily turn into nothingness, like a cloud of smoke and fog that constantly changed in front of his eyes as his thoughts ran through his mind, thus giving him certain hints. His hearing would also be isolated to eliminate all external disturbances, and it could be said that he was truly undistracted. As for his body, it would automatically enter a state of being seized by the system. At that time, his body would automatically identify malicious intent around him and enter a 100% evasion mode, causing all attacks to miss and directly entering a state of ineffectiveness. Wang Ling had a premonition that this matter was very complicated, so he had activated this meditative mode to think about it. Generally speaking, it was only the final exams that qualified him to use this ability. It was just that Wang Ling had overlooked one thing, and that was that Chen Qin was still here and had been frightened by his mode. Sorry, Wang Ling said. He rarely took the initiative to apologize to anyone, and this was his first time doing so. When he saw Chen Qin's expression relax again, Wang Ling somehow felt that he was a little closer to being a normal person. Classmate Chen Qin, don't be too afraid. When Wang Ling is thinking, he's like this. Well, actually, I'm not afraid. I'm just curious. Curious? Why is a person who is as focused as an old monk in meditation when he's thinking about something? Why does he score average in every exam? Super Chen keeps telling me that he suspects Wang Ling is deliberately keeping his scores down. Wang Ling. Hearing this, Lotus Sun laughed and hurriedly changed the subject. But we're not here to talk about exams today. You said earlier that you've sorted out new clues? Yes. As Chen Qin spoke, she took out a stack of washed photos from her pink school bag. In addition to the cell phone screenshots that Wang Ling and Lotus Sun had already seen, they found that among the clues provided this time were some photos of the video blogger's daily life. Where did you get these photos? Lotus Sun asked curiously. These are the photos she posted on other social media platforms before the video was deleted. I found them through her ID. But it seems that she's already logged out of other social media platforms. I don't know if she was logged out, Chen Qin said. Why didn't you take it out earlier? Because I remembered wrongly. These photos were in another phone. Later, I used the cloud drive function of the phone I'm using now to find them. Wang Ling looked through each photo carefully and finally fixed his eyes on one. It was a photo of the vlogger and a man in a Taoist costume. Unfortunately, the face of the Taoist was covered with a thick layer of mosaic. Seeing that Wang Ling was particularly concerned about this photo, Lotus Sun asked tacitly, "Do you remember when this photo was released?" "I remember I saved it half a month ago. But she should have posted the photos on the internet much earlier. Also, this is the only photo she took with someone on that platform," Chen Qin said. In other words, the Taoist priest in the photo might be the last person to see her. After obtaining a new lead from Chen Qin, Wang Ling and Lotus Sun immediately set out on the next step of their operation. Wang Ling took Lotus Sun to Line 19, the terminus of the subway at Qingshan Lake. It was on the outskirts of the city, and there were almost no people living there. There were only a few people camping there on weekends, and almost no one could be seen on weekdays. Seeing that there was no one in the carriage, Lotus Sun asked cautiously, "Wang Ling, you should be able to restore the mosaic in the photo, right?" Wang Ling nodded, then handed over the photo in his hand. Lotus Sun was stunned to find that Wang Ling had actually removed the mosaic. Standing next to the vlogger, who looked very much like Chen Qin, was a female Taoist priest. She didn't look very old, and looked to be about the age of a high school student. She wore a long white robe, and her beautiful black hair was coiled up with a purple Taoist hairpin. She held a pink horsetail whisk in her hand and wore cute straw sandals. Lotus Sun was flabbergasted. She was clearly such a cute girl, but she was actually a female Taoist priest? If this girl was in a proper high school, she felt that she would definitely be the dream girl of many boys. But on the other hand, she breathed a sigh of relief in her heart. Good, she was a female Taoist priest. Otherwise, she would have had more strange competitors. But having said that, there was one thing that astonished Lotus Sunday. Wang Ling was actually able to tell which Taoist temple this cute little female Taoist priest came from just by looking at the photo. That was a little too inconceivable. Nowadays, Taoist temples mostly wore plain clothes like cyan, white or black, and they didn't have any special logos on them. There were more than 100,000 Taoist temples of all sizes in the country, and each one had a different name. Apart from the fact that most Taoist temples were located on mountains, there didn't seem to be much in common. She felt that Wang Ling had probably deduced this female Taoist priest's identity before. Who would have thought that when they arrived at the entrance of the Taoist temple, when a child who looked to be only 13 or 14 years old, but was dressed in Taoist robes, saw Wang Ling, a stunned expression appeared on his face. He hurriedly put down his broom and ran into the Taoist temple shouting, "It's Scholar Wang! Scholar Wang is here! Senior Sister Yu Qing!" Lotus Sun's expression froze slightly at this sudden announcement, and only after a moment of daze did she see the Taoist temple's plaque clearly. The 3 words "Wind and Thunder Manor" were written on it. This was a Taoist temple that Lotus Sun had never heard of before. She knew about Qingshan Lake, but she had never known that there was such a Taoist temple on a mountain about 5 kilometers away from it. A trace of doubt flitted across her mind. Wang Ling had found his way here just by looking at the photo. Lotus Sun had thought that this was the result of a deduction, but judging from the little Taoist priest's reaction just now, she suddenly felt that perhaps Wang Ling and this remote little Taoist temple had some kind of strange connection? No way, it couldn't be that coincidental, right? Her heart was pounding. At that moment, the petite and adorable female Taoist priest from the photo walked out of the Taoist temple with a smile on her face, her pink horsetail whisk in her straw sandals. Long time no see, Scholar Wang. She took the initiative to step forward and looked at Wang Ling's face without any hesitation. There seemed to be some ambiguity in her eyes. After a long while, she turned her gaze to Lotus Sun on the side, then flung the horsetail whisk aside and stretched out her hand. Hello, female Taoist priest. I am Yu Yueqing, the eldest senior sister of Wind and Thunder Taoist Temple. Chapter 1839. Come to think of it, Wang Ling and Yu Yueqing's ill-fated relationship had started a long time ago. Yu Yueqing had been Wang Ling's kindergarten classmate. That was something that had happened a long time ago. When Wang Ling was a child, his parents always liked to jokingly ask him how many husbands and wives he had in kindergarten. Even during his kindergarten years, he couldn't avoid this habit. Yu Yueqing had been one of the targets of Father Wang, Mother Wang and Grandfather Wang's jokes. When they were in primary school, Yu Yueqing even kept in touch with Wang Ling, and sometimes even took the initiative to visit the Wang family's small villa. Later, when Father and Mother Wang heard that Yu Yueqing had moved to another city, the relationship between the two families had become strained. It wasn't until the year Wang Ling entered high school that he heard about Yu Yueqing's recent situation from a junior high classmate. It was said that Yu Yueqing had made a bold decision to become a Taoist priest. Wang Ling was clearly a little dumbfounded when he heard this news. He knew that Yu Yueqing's brain had always been abnormal, but he hadn't expected it to be this abnormal. But very quickly, Wang Ling regained his composure. But Yu Yueqing didn't know much about Wang Ling himself, and didn't know that he had a heaven-defying ability. It was just that her intuition told her that compared with ordinary cultivators, Wang Ling was different. Ever since she was a child, she had felt that Wang Ling was particularly attractive to her. After coming to Wine Thunder Manor and becoming the eldest senior sister, she had once met Wang Ling as a female Taoist priest. For example, the year Wang Ling's grandmother had passed away, it had been Yu Yueqing who had presided over his grandmother's Dharma conference. At that time, she hadn't been as mature as she was now, and her childish face was still as cute as a porcelain doll's. But when she presided over the Dharma conference, her little face was tense and unusually serious. It was obvious that Yu Yueqing was a female Taoist priest with great professional ability. After entering the Taoist hall, Yu Yueqing led Wang Ling and Lotus Sun to sit down on a prayer mat. This used to be Wind Thunder Manor's lecture hall. Peachwood tables were neatly arranged in front of the hall, and each table had a plain prayer mat in front of it. At the very front of the main hall were an offering table and an incense burner, as well as a huge 8 trigrams disc hanging on the wall. The prayer mat in front of the offering table looked slightly bigger than the prayer mat used by ordinary disciples, and it was also black and white in color. Usually, the Wind Thunder Manor's Manor Lord and Yu Yueqing would preach here. Of course, the Wind Thunder Manor Lord was a lazy person. It was mainly Yu Yueqing who preached in the lecture hall as the eldest senior sister. Compared to the other Taoist temples, the Wind Thunder Manor's specialty was that the people here were all young Taoist priests. After pouring tea for the two of them, Yu Yueqing listened to Lotus Sun's tireless speech. She didn't answer the question right away. Instead, she smiled at Lotus Sun and whispered into her ear, Perhaps this is a little rude, but I'm very curious. What kind of relationship do you have with Scholar Wang? Lotus Sun's face immediately burned. We're just classmates. Oh, I see. Yu Yueqing had a look of realization, and immediately became happy. From what I remember, Master Wang almost never talks to girls. The probability of them traveling together is very low. Lotus Sun's cheeks beaded with sweat as she probed. So Taoists are also interested in worldly matters. I'm just a Taoist priest, not a monk. Taoists are also divided into those who are particular and those who aren't. And there aren't many restrictions when it comes to relationships. Those who are particular can get married after finding their true love. Yu Yueqing said with a smile. Get married. Of course I can get married. I just need to renounce asceticism. I became a Taoist precisely because I was waiting for Wang Ling. When he comes around, I can renounce asceticism at any time. Yu Yueqing spoke bluntly in front of Lotus Sun, and her overflowing confidence instantly gave Lotus Sun a great sense of crisis. On the other side, Wang Ling choked at Yu Yueqing's words. He was sure that Yu Yueqing had said this on purpose. He wasn't saying this for Lotus Sun, but for himself. When he was very young, he remembered that Yu Yueqing liked to tease him more than other girls. In the eyes of others, he was clearly regarded as a silent monster and isolated, but in the end, Yu Yueqing still persisted in making all kinds of jokes with him. The speaker had no intention, but the listener had a heart. These words instantly raised Lotus Sun's vigilance, which she had let down before entering the Taoist temple. As expected, she had been thinking too much. It turned out that female Taoists were the most dangerous. She had pretended to be a Taoist, but it turned out that she was just playing hard to get. Dangerous. Lotus Sun felt that this was a huge crisis. It was completely different from when she had faced Jiang Yingying. She had been sure that Jiang Yingying was no match for her, so she had been very calm all this time. But when it came to Yu Yueqing, she knew nothing, and didn't know what to do. As for the story between Yu Yueqing and Wang Ling, Lotus Sun had no idea at all. She was really very curious as to what on earth had happened between the two of them. While Lotus Sun's imagination was running wild, Yu Yueqing flicked the pink horsetail whisk in her hand and abruptly changed the subject. In Lotus Sun's view, this was a very clever move. She didn't have any chance to ask about her relationship with Wang Ling at all. She looked at the photo for a moment, then nodded and said, "The female Buddhist you mentioned did indeed come to Wine Thunder Manor a while ago to ask me for divination. And because her divination was very strange, I remember it very clearly." "Strange divination?" Lotus Sun asked. "Yes, a very strange divination." Yu Yueqing nodded and said, "Logically speaking, this is a client's secret, and I shouldn't have told you. But looking at it now, this female Buddhist might be in danger, so let's handle this special case." She looked at Lotus Sun and Wang Ling with a deadpan expression and said, "She wanted me to tell a divination about her job interview. Strange, right? She's clearly a girl about our age, but at such a young age, she abandoned her studies to go to work. At this age, the only way out is to study, and studying is more important than anything else, rather than finding a place to work." Wang Ling and Lotus Sun suddenly felt that Yu Yueqing wasn't qualified to say this. But Yu Yueqing didn't seem to sense anything wrong with what she had said and continued, "By the way, my divination wasn't very good, so I advised her not to go to work, even if she passed the interview." At that moment, Yu Yueqing sighed. It seems that she thought I was too young, and didn't believe me at all. So she probably went to that unit, and something happened to her. "Your divination is so accurate?" Lotus Sun was stunned. "Of course." Yu Yueqing smiled and took out a palm-sized turtle shell from the storage bag in her Taoist robe. "Scholar Wang gave this to me when I was very young. It contains proof of our love, so the divination is definitely accurate." Wang Ling. Chapter 1840. This was a little turtle shell that had been transformed by Wang Ling's version 1.0 enchantment spell. Father and Mother Wang had forced him to give it to Yu Yueqing when she had been the closest to the Wang family back then. Back then, Wang Ling had been very afraid of Yu Yueqing's particular fondness for pestering him, so he had given her the turtle shell for a very simple purpose. He wanted Yu Yueqing to use it to divine her marriage fate, so that she could find a good husband in the future. Wang Ling had to admit that although he had been very young back then, he had indeed thought a little too much. Yu Yueqing obviously hadn't used this turtle shell to divine her marriage fate, but had used it to directly embark on the path of a female Taoist. Speaking of which, Wang Ling sighed. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to call this fated relationship an ill-fated one. But then again, the gremlins in the Wang family's small villa, such as Lord Ma, had already undergone version 3.0 of the latest enchantment spell. Wang Ling never thought that this version 1.0 enchantment turtle shell would actually be able to divine so accurately. According to Yu Yueqing herself, the turtle shell could predict what would happen in the next 6 months. If the timeline was closer, it would be more detailed, and the further away it was, the fuzzier it would be. So far, the most accurate thing it could do was predict the good or bad luck of an event. Who knew if she was trying to show off her divination ability? But Yu Yueqing began to shake the turtle shell in front of Lotus Sun with a serious expression. After all the copper coins in the turtle shell had been shaken out, Yu Yueqing stared at them carefully and began to speak tirelessly. Today, brothers and sisters who leave a message in this chapter will be lucky. Tomorrow, that shameless author Ku Xian will update once again. He delays every day. I've never seen this before. 4 months from now, around 520, a female celebrity from Sun Island with the surname Xin Yuan will announce her marriage. The internet will suffer the loss of a wife. Yu Yueqing spoke very seriously. In one divination, she had directly said 3 things that would happen today, tomorrow, and even further into the future, which left Lotus Sun gasping in amazement. No wonder when she and Wang Ling had come here. They had seen all kinds of men and women visiting Wind Thunder Manor to worship the 3 pure ones. Most of them came to visit after hearing that Yu Yueqing's divination was accurate. However, Yu Yueqing would usually tell her own fortune before she told someone else's fortune. She would only agree to tell her fortune based on the content of the request. Not everyone's requests would be accepted. There were many old-looking gray-robed Taoists in the Wind Thunder Manor. In fact, these gray-robed Taoists were cultivators who had come from all over the country. They were here to perform a divination for Yu Yueqing, and then fulfill her wish. However, the Taoist temple was very small, and there were only 6 places for cultivation. Therefore, those who came to fulfill their wishes needed to make an appointment in advance. Lotus Sun glanced at the appointment list. The longest appointment for those who had come to fulfill their wishes was already 7 months later. It's indeed very popular. Lotus Sun muttered to herself. The more Yu Yueqing spoke, the more she felt a sense of crisis. Because she had never known that before Wang Ling had given her something, he had taken the initiative to give something to another girl. Moreover, Lotus Sun didn't need to think to know that this little turtle shell had been specially enchanted. In other words, Wang Ling might probably, had indeed liked Yu Yueqing before. For a moment, her heart was in a whirl. She clearly knew that now wasn't the time to think about these things, but once her emotions got tangled up, she couldn't care less. In the first round, Lotus Sun had to admit that she had lost. She couldn't see through Yu Yueqing. This was the first time she had ever felt this way. Yu Yueqing, on the other hand, was completely unperturbed as she said those easily misunderstood words in a joking manner. Back to business. She flipped through the Taoist temple's client directory and directly showed Wang Ling and Lotus Sun the records of all the good men and women she had visited. She directly flipped through the directory to a record from more than half a month ago. This is the female scholar you're looking for. The name written on it was Li Xian. Her address is at the back. Our Taoist temple delivers small pendants to visiting scholars every month. Haha, this is actually the master's way of winning over the scholars. At the same time, the pendants also have our Wind Thunder Manor's name on them, which is also a form of advertisement. Lotus Sun tried hard to compose herself as she asked, "Is she called Li Xian? Is it a fake name?" "I don't think so. Because before each divination, I always make it clear that you have to use your real name. Otherwise the results won't be accurate." "So that's how it is. Okay, thank you, Taoist you." Lotus Sun nodded and got up. At that moment, Yu Yueqing grabbed Lotus Sun's arm. Wait, you're leaving just like that?" We've already seen the address. We're going to look for her there," said Lotus Sunday. "Don't worry, I'll go with you." Yu Yueqing smiled. Lotus Sun was stunned. "But, will it be okay without Taoist you in the Taoist temple?" "It's not a big deal. At worst, I won't do any divination when I'm not around." Besides, the master will be here. If you need anything, you can look for him. Yu Yueqing narrowed her eyes and smiled cutely. Wang Ling. Oh no, Scholar Wang. It's not easy for him to take the initiative to look for me, so I have to help. To be honest, Lotus Sun actually didn't really want to take Yu Yueqing with her. But after all, it was Yu Yueqing who had provided the information on that vlogger. If she refused to obviously, it would make her look bad. Helpless, Lotus Sun could only sigh silently in her heart and agree to Yu Yueqing's request. Before they left the Taoist temple, a young Taoist brought Yu Yueqing a brand new pink horsetail whisk. It was a dark pink horsetail whisk. Apart from the difference in color, there didn't seem to be anything special about it. Seeing Yu Yueqing replace the horsetail whisk, Lotus Sun couldn't help asking curiously, "What's the matter?" "Nothing, it's just that I think this trip might be dangerous. It's not easy for us to go down the mountain. Of course, we have to be prepared." Yu Yueqing smiled. What's the saying? The more you use a weapon, the more ruthless it is. Wang Ling and Lotus Sun. Although she wasn't very old, she was already at the peak late foundation establishment stage, and was about to step into the golden core stage. In terms of cultivation aptitude, Lotus Sun felt that Yu Yueqing was very similar to herself, and even more talented. After confirming that Yu Yueqing had joined the team, Lotus Sun directly called a taxi with her phone at the foot of the mountain. Seeing this, Yu Yueqing was startled. Call a taxi here? Do you know how expensive it is to take a taxi there? Lotus Sun smiled awkwardly. Then should we go on a sword? Flying a sword isn't challenging at all. Since we have to cultivate at the same time, the first choice is naturally a bicycle. Our Taoist temple has a one-car garage at the foot of the mountain. The three of us can ride there. Yu Yueqing smiled kindly. Lotus Sun had no choice but to agree. As for Wang Ling sandwiched between the two women, he really didn't know what to do. But the moment they saw the bicycle, Wang Ling and Lotus Sun regretted not turning down Yu Yueqing's request earlier, because this was a long bicycle that could seat 3 people. Chapter 1841. Looking at this ivory 3-person bicycle in front of them, Wang Ling and Lotus Sun fell into deep thought at the same time. It was really hard for Wang Ling to imagine what it would be like to ride this bicycle through the streets. Would he really not be taken for a lunatic? Furthermore, if he was sandwiched between 2 girls, what kind of expression would passers-by look at him? He clearly wasn't the Sea King. Would he be taken for one? If some nosy person took a photo and posted it online, wouldn't he be instantly killed? After all, some news media nowadays couldn't even directly publish news about important academicians without verifying it first, which was really unprofessional behavior. It seriously lowered the credibility of the domestic media. The most important thing was that after publishing it, if they found out that there was something wrong with the report, they would directly delete it and pretend that nothing had happened, without apologizing. This was simply too shameless. A great man had once said that the current news industry still had to learn more. After all, they were too young and needed to improve their knowledge, otherwise they would have to take responsibility if there were any deviations in their reports in the future. Don't spend all day thinking about making big news. Wang Ling felt that this lecture wasn't wrong at all. So being a little cautious was always the right thing to do. Don't be fooled by how ordinary this bicycle looks. It's actually very agile. I've given it the nickname Little White Dragon. Yu Yueqing smiled. Of course, I know you might not be used to it, so I prepared a helmet for you in advance. As she said this, she took out the motorcycle helmet in an exceptionally considerate manner. Yu Yueqing was well aware of Wang Ling's sociopathic personality. He definitely wouldn't be used to riding this bicycle around so openly. As long as there was a suitable cover, a motorcycle helmet was a very good choice, and it could also ensure safety. After all, when the bicycle in the cultivation world was in operation, how fast it could be ridden depended on the realm of the rider. Yu Yueqing estimated their strength. They were all at the peak late foundation establishment stage, and with the 3 of them riding together, Little White Dragon could directly exceed 600 kilometers per hour. Wang Ling and Lotus Sun both sweated. Of course, they also knew about the invisible rule of riding a bicycle based on one's realm. So it was hard for them to imagine what it would be like for Wang Ling to ride a bicycle. Surpassing the speed of light was just a basic operation. How many times faster was the problem? Wang Ling took the motorcycle helmet and couldn't help sighing in his heart. They hadn't seen each other in years, but Yu Yueqing's way of thinking was still as novel as ever. Luckily, he was wearing a motorcycle helmet, so he didn't feel so embarrassed. Before he got on the car, he shook his finger and used the lowest level enchantment spell on the little white dragon, so that it wouldn't directly disintegrate while it was moving at high speed. Then he put on his helmet and headed straight for the front of the bike. Just in case, he intended to take control of the bike himself. But Yu Yueqing saw through him and stopped him. Wait, Wang Ling. Do you know the way? Why don't I do it? Wang Ling. Of course he knew the way. If Yu Yueqing hadn't insisted on following them, he might have found a remote corner and teleported there with Lotus Sunday. Seeing that Yu Yueqing was putting him in a difficult position, Lotus Sun immediately stepped forward to smooth things over. How about I do it? I've been there before and I know the way. Are you sure? Yu Yueqing asked again. I'll sit at the front. Lotus Sun nodded. Then Wang Ling will sit second, and I'll sit at the back. They finished their discussion calmly. Just as Lotus Sun was about to sit at the front of the bike, she suddenly realized a very serious problem. Lotus Sun suddenly realized that she had fallen into Yu Yueqing's trap. First of all, Wang Ling, who was sitting second, definitely wouldn't hold her waist. Then Yu Yueqing, who was sitting third. It was very likely that she would directly hold Wang Ling's waist. And then she would call him, in an extremely intimate manner. That intense image almost instantly filled Lotus Sun's mind. Good heavens. It turned out that Taoist Yu had been waiting for her here. No. She absolutely couldn't let Yu Yueqing have her way. So before she got on the car, she changed her mind again. Taoist Yu, there's a part of the road that I don't remember very clearly. How about you sit second? It'll be easier for you to show me the way. Sure, no problem. To Lotus Sun's surprise, Yu Yueqing actually agreed happily without the slightest hint of regret on her face. In that instant, Lotus Sun's heart was moved. She felt that maybe she was simply overthinking things, and shouldn't have been so petty. But sometimes, she still felt that being a little more cautious was always the right thing to do. Just like that, a Taoist priest and 2 Foundation Establishment high school students from a Cultivation high school officially rode Little White Dragon on their way to find that vlogger called Li Xian. On the road, Wang Ling could feel a strong sense of shame through his motorcycle helmet. It was as if the gazes of the people around him could penetrate the helmet and land on him, making his forehead sweat profusely. He could only bury his head in pedaling to complete his mission. After many twists and turns, they finally arrived at the address they had registered at the Taoist temple at about 7:30 in the evening. It was an apartment. When the 3 of them reached the ground floor, the apartment manager immediately opened the door with a vigilant look in his eyes. Who are you looking for? We're looking for a resident called Li Xian. Can you let us in? Lotus Sun asked. You don't live in this apartment, do you? I've never seen you before. Unless she comes down to pick you up, I can't let you in, the apartment manager said strictly. And recently, some lawbreakers like to dress up as pitiful student groups and sneak into the apartment to steal things. Of course, I'm not suspecting you. It's just that people have been in a state of panic recently, and it's our duty. Understood. Lotus Sun nodded. At that moment, the apartment manager said, By the way, if you can find the landlord of this apartment and he gives you permission, I can let you in. I'm just a worker. I really can't take responsibility if something happens. The landlord? Are all the residents in this apartment tenants? Yu Yueqing asked. Yes. The apartment manager nodded. This is a group apartment for white-collar workers, and is specially rented out to migrant workers. There's only one landlord. This entire building belongs to him. That's easy. Hearing this, Lotus Sun was instantly happy. When she took out her phone, Wang Ling already knew what she wanted to do. Lotus Sun dialed Old Master Sun's number and said, Yes, Grandpa. Have you heard of an apartment called Conch Apartments? It's on Beihai Road. Yes, I've taken a fancy to this building. Can Grandpa buy it? It'll be done in 10 minutes, right? Okay, I'll wait for Grandpa's news. Wang Ling, Yu Yueqing, and the apartment manager were all dumbfounded. From their point of view, what Lotus Sun had just bought wasn't an apartment, but a walnut. That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.